Well, that was, this is my dinner. It's spinach and peas and caramelized onions and garlic. And what else? Little seasonings. And little sour cream and Parmesan cheese. And the chicken's not going to be done for a couple hours, so I'm going for this. And we're sharing a meal. Okay. So, and peas. That's what peas. Oh, and cilantro and parsley. Lots of parsley. Fresh parsley. It was on sale. 4 big bunches for 99 cents. So I'm going to be a lot of parsley. It's good for you. And that's how my menu goes. Is I go in every day, if I go down by a place, and buy whatever on sale. I almost bought like 10-pound pot roast because it cost normally $22, but it was on sale for $5.50, and they were going to throw it out the next, like, if I didn't buy it. But and I'm not really a big fan of red meat, chicken and fish. Red meat every now and then, but I buy it because it was really, who knows what it would taste like. But when I usually don't buy more than $15 worth of food, and my everything I got, but not that, came to about $17. Now I could have, gone for the next $5, but I didn't. So we're other than the sour cream in here, it's pretty much a vegetarian meal. And I made a big wok of it, and then put it in mason jars. And that's kind of what else I do. I make a pretty big meal twice a week, and then I put it in mason jars and eat it for the rest of the week, adding it to, like, I'll buy 2 onions or 2 this or 2 that. Anyway, I said I was going to start around 6ish, and it's now around 7ish. Time flies. I took a shower. I made this, and now just cooking and starting that fire. I have about 1,200 square feet or more warm on 6 pieces of wood and cooking dinner and running the dryer for my towel. Oh, yeah. And I let the hot water go hot for 4 or 5 minutes, and it steamed up this whole floor. I had the bathroom door open, and steam came in. So the dry heat of the fire will mix with that, and my nose won't get all dried out. So you do little things like that, and that's how you are comfortable for not much money. And if the whole world did things like that, we would use about 1/3 of what we have. We don't need to use oil, There's so many other things. Like a good example of, so back, I just read that they put in another Titanic. They built a new Titanic. And so it reminds me to tell you the story of the Titanic. So Star Lines, which is owned by Rockefeller and Morgan and Krupp and a few other kind of, Illuminati investors, the Titanic had three sister ships. And there was the Titanic, the Liberty, and something that started with an I. And it was coming out of the Belfast port and ran into a boat. And it crumpled the side of the boat. So they couldn't get all, I mean, you know, it's going to cost a lot. They'd almost have to rebuild that side of the boat, and the insurance was going to pay for it. So what they did do was they put like tin foil on the hole in the side of the boat, and kept it in port, fixed it, and then they rolled off the Titanic and the maiden voyage, right? So what they did do was take that crumpled boat and put Titanic on it and tripled the insurance like the week before it sailed. You know? And just like the World Trade Center towers were sold to Larry, who made his fortune in controlled demolition in New York City. I'm talking about 9/11. There's these kind of parallels. And so Larry bought it for almost nothing. And he only had to put up $6 million, right? And so he got it, put it in his name. He got $1 billion or $2 billion worth of insurance on each tower, right? And $1 billion on Building 7. And, you know, hundreds of millions on the other smaller buildings within the, because there were 7 buildings in the footprint of the World Trade Center. So, same with the Titanic. They roll out this other boat that had a big hole in it and covered with tinfoil, and basically wrote Titanic on it and said, "Oh, this is a brand new ship. It'll never sink. It's perfect. Blah blah blah." Right? So, everyone gets on board, and the people who got on board were the old wealth, the Astors, the Pierpoints, the Biltmores, and they were fighting. They were standing in the way of having the Federal Reserve passed, right? But they thought it was. They knew all about the Babylon black magic of money, fractionalization of loaning and basically taking everyone's money to the laundry and just giving people useless paper. So those guys were standing in the way, meaning every time it came up to a vote, they put the pressure on the senators to not pass it and get passed. No, they pull out of Ireland. They're heading to New York. The captain, who had stage 4 cancer, which they didn't even know. They knew he had cancer, and they knew he had not many days to go. And so the powers that be, and I want you to write this down. Khazarian Mafia. And those are the people who are behind the Illuminati, who are behind Rothschild, people you don't see. And that's an ancient crew. I mean, back to like 300 AD. So so the boat pulls out, and the guy keeps saying, "I'm going to make the world speed record from Ireland to New York City." So he's doing like 30 knots. And he's gotten reports of, hey, there's, icebergs out there, watch out. So he, instead of going around them, he goes right through where all the icebergs are because he wants to make the record, right? He's straight line. And he knows this, and he has been paid off by this mafia crew to sink that boat with those wealthy people on board. And so they're going 30 knots through the iceberg neck of the woods, and they should have gone around it or gone slow. Anyway, so they see a quarter mile away, big iceberg, and the guy's out in the car. Hey, it's iceberg! If he just threw it in reverse, it plowed the boat straight into the iceberg, it would have been fine. They were, smashed up the front, but everybody would have got out alive. What he did, he didn't slow down. He just went this way, and he grazed the iceberg where that hole where the tinfoil was, and ripped it all off. And it took it from the first section of the boat to the rear. And so they had all of these places where they could, cordon off the water, but not when the whole side of the boat was taken out. And it got taken out because instead of having big, thick steel, it had plate aluminum on it. And it sank very quickly. And the sea itself, there was cloud in the sky, a starry night. And the Star Company, there were two other ships out there within, 10 miles of the boat. And the Home Office told everyone to turn off their radios at X time. And the faux Titanic ran into the iceberg about an hour and a half after everyone turned off their radios. And the two captains, those two boats, were told, on the down low, this was going to happen. So when the boats thing, they're shooting off flares, right? And, just like in the naval thing of flags communicating, flares also, certain colors, certain patterns mean certain things. And so the guys in the other boats who were seamen said, hey, those flares, that means something. And the captains both said to both their crews, no. It's just the Titanic. They're just having fireworks. And then about 4 or 5 hours after the boat sank, those boats kind of cruised into where, the people in the lifeboats were, so they got them off. But anybody who didn't make it in a lifeboat froze to death almost instantaneously. And that the movie Titanic, our hero, you can see that he freezes to death pretty quick in the icy waters of the Atlantic. And that movie would have been even better if they had told that story, because that's what happened. And that's what happened in 9/11. Very similar things. But what you need to do to really get a hold of, I could spend hours talking about 9/11, but I'm not, because I'm going to be talking about these guys, KALAF. No, excuse me, that's Caliphate. KHAZARIN, Mafia. Right? So you need to go, hey Google, 9/11 Truth, and you'll get a zillion websites and YouTube pages. Go surf that, and also, but primarily go to Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth. And there is another crew of about 40 or 50 engineers, scientists, psychologists that have published, a peer-reviewed, amazing investigation of what happened, right? And there's a book, there is a film, and there is a report. And the report is really long. The film is quite interesting. And the book is very interesting too. It has all the meat of the matter, but written in a way that the average person could digest it well. And none of this is, when people go, oh, that's conspiracy theories. Come on, what does that conspiracy means when more than two people come together in secret to make something happen? That's a conspiracy, right? Theory is an idea. So what's so wrong with investigating, a conspiracy and having a theory about it? It doesn't mean you're nuts. I mean, if our body politic can withstand Donald Trump and the Republicans and the Democrats. See, the thing is, it isn't that Republicans and Democrats against each other. They both are guilty for what's going down here. And and the American public is guilty too, because we're allowing it to happen. If we go and vote and put the Democrats in, the same crap will happen, What needs to happen is the people need to, like 1 million people need to go to D.C. and stay there. And not scream and yell and be bitchy or, a jerk, but be there. I mean, you should go and look at what happened in Occupy this Zuccotti Park. Now, I was there when it not when it kicked off, but 3 or 4 weeks after it kicked off, once it was starting to get implemented well. I spent a few weeks there, couch surfing, and I had a friend who put me up in the really nice hotel, which was just a block away. So, whenever anyone needed a nice bed or a shower or a jacuzzi, I took them to my suite. Anyway, yeah. 1 million people went there and just sat on the lawn, and everyone went to their congressman and their senator and didn't scream at them, but just, went in and said to the person, I'd like to see my congressman. Oh, he's busy right now. Well, I'll wait in the office. And if there were like 300 people waiting for that guy in the office, and then when they closed, they walked out. I mean, they don't break any laws, but their presence is really felt. And Americans haven't done that at all, because whenever they do marches or this, it's more for their ego. During the Vietnam War, I was a anti-war activist. Because my butt was on the line. I was going to get drafted and sent there. And that's why they got the volunteer army, so they would take people like me out of the equation. But, I was there. In the, it was before I went to New Mexico, so it had to be 71-ish. And I went there, and it's usually what happens. I meet a fine woman, and I spark co-creatively. And it's more about doing something with her and then making a community and having a, yes, exactly. Martin Luther King did the same thing. Exactly. And so went there, and, when I was younger, living in the Lower East Side, I had nice apartments, but I also there were tons of abandoned buildings, and there was this guy there were a bunch of anarchists who were living in them. And they showed me how to live in an abandoned building. And there's a guy named Adam Purple, and there were a number of other guys, but he's pretty well known. He had a really interesting place on 6th Street. And there was a TV show about police, Something Blue. And it opened up with an image of different places in the Lower East Side. And one of them was Adam's sculpture. Anyway, so we were in Maryland near College Park, because we were just down the road from the metro. So if we wanted to go to D.C., we could just jump on that. And if we wanted to, and mostly what we did was, or these guys did, was they basically Going through college, University of Maryland, College Park, there's the big main road, 4-lane road, goes right through the school. And there's little bridges over the highway that go from one side of the campus to the other. The road goes right through it. Anyway, so these guys used to either throw trash, they picked up metal garbage cans in the school and take them to the bridge and throw them on top of carts, which would careen out of control and smash into things and cause chaos. I never liked that because it just pissed the police off who would get that. And I was more into going to the congressman's office, and talking to them and having teach-ins and things of that kind. And I wasn't just looking at the war, I was looking at the war as a symptom to the real issue of economic disparity and racial disparity and gender disparity. And these were all ideas that, what are you talking about? It's the war. No, the war is a symptom. And then I would talk about the history of the war, who started it, how it started. Huh? It's the war. We had to the war. Who started it, how it started. Huh? It's the war. We had to stop the war. No, you have to understand what caused it. Why? Because we've had about 30 wars since, 1960. We actually started the Vietnam War in 1948. Because we were allies with Ho Chi Minh fighting the Japanese, and we told him that he was going to be the George Washington, and we wouldn't let the French come back. But as soon as it was over, we had the French come back because the French were doing the heroin there. They were doing the poppy, and that's why George H. Bush is known as Poppy. So there I am in this abandoned building with about 6 guys and about 8, 10 women who were all great, and the women were much more smarter, much better organized. And we, I was with them, and we were going and talking to groups and getting people to become community organizers, not just against the war. And my grandma hit 100 years old, and they had a big party in New York City where she lived. And, Grandma, speech. She gets up and she goes, I don't really like many of you. And I've got this, Greyhound bus pass where I can go anywhere I want for a whole year. And I'm going to go visit all my friends across America. And then I'm going to come home and die. Grandma, what? Anyway, so, I didn't go to her birthday. She came to me in a dream and said, don't worry about it. It's all fine. And then my brother called me a couple of days later and said, oh, man, you should have seen what happened. Grandma gave everyone the 411. And so, I smiled because that's my lady who brought me up. It's just like, she always was. And most people had no idea what Grandma was like until she did stuff like that, because she was very down low, very calm, very cool. But she was so above and ahead of everybody else and all her kids, everybody else. Anyway, so I'm in and this abandoned building. There are no doors. That place was it had been a very nice house at one time. So there were all kinds of oak this and mahogany that and light fixtures. And when it, got boarded up, people went in there and ripped everything out, the copper pipes and all the good wood and the architectural this and that. So it was kind of a beat up space, but it was still very nice and had a lot of bedrooms and a big, beautiful living room. You could have meetings, a great kitchen and a dining room and a library and fireplaces in virtually every frigging room. And so in the winter, you could pretty much, and they didn't break the windows and the fireplaces worked really well. And, the water was downstairs and there was electricity, so I kind of got some garden hoses and, jury-rigged the electricity so it kind of worked. And so it was quite a nice little place. There were no doors. There was no staircase. There was no anything that had nice wood. All the moldings were gone. So, me and the boys, we built a staircase to get up and down from the second floor and down to the basement. But there were no doors, so we had kind of, you know, curtains and blankets over the door. Not the greatest of privacy, but you know, we none of us were like freaked out about seeing each other naked. Yeah, and we were basically all nudists. I mean, this was 1970. We all went to high school in 1960. We all read the Harriet Experiment. Half of us lived the Harriet Experiment. So I'm in bed with this lovely woman who I love, and she is just the hottest, sexiest, brilliant, most fun person to be with. You know, so intimacy was 24/7. All eating a peach was intimate with her. So anyway, so we're entwined, and a friend of mine kind of pokes, one of the guys pokes his head and says, "Hey, Al, there's an old lady at the front door, and she's got bags of groceries, and she says she's your grandmother." And I go, "Yep." I said, "She's about this tall, and she's about this wide, and she's Italian, right?" And she, "Oh yeah, that's her." So put on some. Actually, the only thing I could put on was my girlfriend's dress, right? So I threw that over me, went out there, and oh, grandma, and she lit up, and oh, Albert, and gave me a hug and a kiss, and I said, "Come on into the kitchen, let me make you a cup of tea." And she did not say a word about me wearing a dress. It just, "Oh, look at this place. This is kind of interesting. What are you doing? And you having fun?" And then my girlfriend kind of cleaned up and got some clothes on and came out, and I introduced her. And they just hit it off. And they were just talking while making the tea. And all the other women came in, and grandma, she was the chief, and the girls were her second, and they just loved her. And I started cleaning up and making the tea, and the girls just pushed me out, and for the rest of the afternoon it was grandma and the girls, and the guys were like at the window, looking, "Who's that?" I said, "That's my grandmother. Don't worry about it. It'll be great." So they clean up the kitchen. I say, "Come on, guys," and we on the ground floor there was this library. And that had these bifold doors, which the people, they were like stuck in the wall, so they didn't realize that they were there. So anyway, that was the one room that had privacy, and it had its own bathroom that actually worked. So I said, "That's going to be my grandma's. Let's clean all our stuff out. Let's go upstairs, get the best bed, bring it down, table. Let's clean everything up." We scrubbed it up. We went down in the basement, got some linseed oil, and cleaned things and cleaned the windows. And the windows were really nice. They were leaded windows. And so it was, and I went through the neighborhood, and I found a really nice carpet somebody was throwing out, dragged it there. We cleaned that, put it down over the floor, and it looked very nice, and I went down to not a Five and Dime, but a Woolworths or something like that, and got brand new freaking sheets and pillowcases and pillows and curtains, and we fixed it all up. Grandma was getting the kitchen and the food together for about 3 hours, and me and the boys got grandma's bedroom all fixed up for her, and she made my favorite eggplant parmesan and chicken parmesan and gnocchi, and what else did she make? Fresh bread and pies, and she liked to drink, so she had booze with her. And so we had this feast with candles, and before dinner, I said, "Grandma, you tired? You want to take a little nap?" And I took her in that room, and we had flowers, and, she looked around, she goes, "You're my boy." So I closed the doors. She took a nice nap, and she came back, awake when the food was smelling just right. And the girls, so anyway, dinner comes, the girls are wearing dresses. They're totally got their hair, really nice. The boys we're wearing shirts and pants and shoes that aren't really rattered or tattered, and we look quite nice too. So we have this very nice dinner, and we talk about everything there is to talk about. And my grandma starts telling stories about Italy and how she came over on the boat, and how she met my grandpa on the boat, and how they grew, had their first children in New York City, and how they lived in New York City and Long Island, and they had the American dream. And but as an Italian, when she came over on the boat, she and my not so much my grandfather, because he was an elegant. I mean, he always wore a tuxedo. I mean, he was this super duper barber surgeon, and his thing was in the Waldorf Astoria, and he, took care of people like J.P. Morgan. I mean, J.P. Morgan is the guy who came and brought him over. So, but they were surrounded. They were up near Harlem, where it wasn't just black folk; it was everybody. And they saw how the disparagements of finances were. That was the Gilded Age. And but America was a place that if you worked hard and you had a dream and you really, really, really pursued it, you could accomplish it, pretty much. So she's talking about all of that, but she's talking about all the different friends she had. And see, Italians, when they came over on the boat, when my grandma came over, they were treated like Donald Trump is treating Muslims and Hispanics coming from Mexico and Central and South America. And that's the history of the United States. That's what an empire does. It picks an other and tells the base of their political structure, the useless eaters, hey, things suck because of those people. I mean, it used to be really great back in the day, but it's those people. If we get rid of those people, right? And America has been that way since day one, We came, good old Chris came here and basically did that to the people who were here, the indigenous folk, The only good Indian is a dead one. It took us 300 years, but we killed 100 million indigenous folk here on North America. And, we called it America, And we called them American Indians, No. And when you talk to an indigenous person and call them that, they want to punch you. So my grandma's talking about all of this stuff, and she's talking about all kinds, because she was a well-read woman. She taught herself how to read, and the house she was in was full of books, so she read them all. And so she's talking about, every philosopher, you name it, and every bit of American history. And she is, why do you think I learned how to tell, to be a griot? My grandmother. So she's going on, and I'm just sitting over there smoking a doobie. And, we're all smoking doobies, except for Grandma, and not even a peep. I mean, like I said, I met her at the door wearing a dress. Didn't even faze her. So anyway, so she stays, and the girls, and we, by the end of that week, within 4 or 5 days, all the guys are wearing white shirts and ties and pants and shined shoes, and not because Grandma said so, because we want to do, be what we thought she wanted us to be. All she really wanted us to be is happy in ourselves. Anyway, and the girls were wearing dresses below their knees, and so Grandma, by that weekend, it's a springy kind of day, and so she goes, we should have an outside kitchen, and because the kitchen of that house was nice, it was okay, but it was kind of small, and you couldn't hang out in it, really. Meaning, if all 12, we'd all be shoulder to shoulder. So it had a place where there was a garden, and there was a place where there were all these trees. So she said, go find some tarps and some ropes and tie them around the trees. So that's where we're going to build the kitchen. So if it rains, we'll be protected, and we'll have a table out there. and you boys go find some tables and chairs. And it was not hard. I mean, people in D.C. and that surrounding Maryland area, rich people throw stuff away that you just can't believe. So we went out there and got a ton of furniture and tables and kitchen stuff, and we built fire pits, and we found big plates of steel that I took to a guy I knew who sandblasted. We sandblasted them and then put them underneath the fire pit. So we had a grill, not a grill, but a hot plate to put pots and basically. Anyway, so we were cooking there. So once we started cooking that Sunday, the smell was all through the neighborhood. So people came over going, wow, what is that smell? And Grandma invited everybody in. And this was a neighborhood that was, 1970, it was in transition, meaning all the people who had been there for 20 years and made it a neighborhood, they were going to the suburbs, or their kids were going, they were moving up. And it was just the people who got stuck there. But they weren't bad people, and drugs hadn't really, really, really hit that neck of the woods quite yet. So everyone comes in the neighborhood and eats, and all the grandmas come together. It's like, what do you call it when you have an atomic bomb? You have the critical mass. So the grandmas are this critical mass, and they're all from Europe, and they're Jewish and Italian and Irish and German, and they're all telling their stories, right? Just like all good griots do. And it was amazing. And the guys brought out, all their hooch, and we're just sitting there eating great food and feeling no pain and listening to the stories. And from that Sunday on, that whole neighborhood ate in our backyard. And everybody brought food and pots and pans, and the kitchen got bigger and bigger, and the space that people, where the table got longer and longer, and more chairs. And then people who were kind of homeless kind of came there, and we kind of cut down the fences on our side of the block, so people were camping. There were like maybe 10 houses in that side of the block. We took all the fences down and made it one gigantic backyard. And spring was coming, so Grandma said, okay, let's look at this area. This has got really good ground, really good earth, really good sun. Let's make the garden here. So we took the chunks of the fences that we had taken down and put them around the garden, and it was like quite a big garden, Grandma and this other lady who were real gardeners, and they did raised beds. No one ever saw fucking raised beds. And they were turning the good earth and filling the raised beds. When you do raised beds with good earth, you have 5 times the yield of just sticking stuff in your backyard. So, by early spring, we were having, stuff, and there were berries along one back side of 2 backyards that kind of had been mistreated, but the grandmas spunked them back. So, by May, we were having spring vegetables and berries, and it just got better and better and better. So Grandma was there almost a month, and then she says, well, I have to go. I have to, go visit other friends. Everything's doing great, and all the grandmas hugged, and all the women hugged, and all the women cried, and the men were there, wanting to hug and cry, but they, some of us did. Like me, I'm always a hugger and crier. And so me and my girlfriend and a few of the other grandmas and other women took Grandma down to the bus station and put her on her bus, and she was heading to Florida, I think. I'm not quite sure what her next stop was, but she bounced all over the United States, north, south, east, west, and visited all her old friends who had moved away, and she spent almost a whole year doing that. And then she came back before her birthday, came home, and she had called my parents and my uncles and said, hey, I'm coming, pick me up at the bus station at Port Authority, which my father did. The other guys didn't. And he just brought her back to her apartment, which my dad kept paying the rent on. And that night, she went to bed and didn't wake up. She was dead, And so they had the big wake for her. And by that time, I had grandma's seed of the backyard and organizing the grandmas. And she was a big sewer, a knitter, crocheter. And all the grandmas were like, oh, you crochet, I do this. And there were a lot of grandmas from the South who did quilts. And Grandma was a big fan of quilts. She didn't quite quilt herself because she was, like I said, really into crocheting. And so she was saying, this should, in the old days, they used to make these things and it was like art. They covered whole, walls and not just beds and da-da-da-da. And one of the, the grandmas and the girls went to a anti-war event at the Pentagon. And there weren't that many people. The grandmas and the girls and me and a few of the other guys, we were a larger constituency than anybody else. And all the other people like screaming and yelling and angry and upset. And Grandma said, it doesn't seem like that's going to do very much. This needs, if we could bring the backyard to the Pentagon and feed these people and make them happy like we made everyone in the neighborhood happy, that might change something. And all the other grandmas and the women and me and a few other guys said, yeah, that's a good idea. So when Grandma left, we decided to make a, committee, a action coalition of everybody in the neighborhood. And, we said, okay, we're still going to do the meals every day here, but let's, everyone in the neighborhood who are interested in this organizational motif, this thing we're going to do that we're working on in a collaborative co-creation of love, this is where I kind of started that kind of motif, go get, as many other people and bring them to dinner and we'll talk about what we could do. So they did, and it expanded out into neighborhoods further afield from just ours. And came, hold on a second. I want everyone to breathe. All right, and I want you to go into state. When I come back and finish the story, you're going to go there. Right? So, okay, work on it. I'm going to go get something to put on because I don't want to get a chill. And I haven't, stacked, build the fire. You got to keep putting wood in it. And I have to carry wood down, and my body is kind of achy, Anyway, just breathe, okay? Whoa! Go to the light. Go to the light. Go to the light. Woo! Anyway. Ah! Ooh! Ee! Ah! Oh, Lord have mercy. Ah! Ooh! Okay, I'm back. That chicken smells really good too. Anyway, so we go down, and basically around the Pentagon, it's like a big grass everywhere, and often different sections are where, the buses and subways and the trains and the parking lots are. But pretty much around it, it's, a good football field's width of length of really nice grass all the way around the Pentagon. So we set up our little camp in a, place that's not near a bus depot or a train station or a parking lot, but it's kind of over there, and you could almost not notice us. And so we go over there and we put down all of these quilts that the grandmas have made, and we start connecting them together, right? And then that's kind of what we sit on, and we don't really build fire pits, but we bring food, and we start preparing it and laying it out on the quilts. And as people come out and say, "What are you guys doing?" You go, "You hungry?" And they go, "What do you got?" And we give them really food, and they go, "Wow, this is great, much better than that crap they have in the cafeteria." So anyway, every day, and we'd go away. And then every day we'd come back, and we'd have this nice little spread of food, and they just kept coming out having food. And there were women who sang and read poetry and painted, and our little quilt circle got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger until we surrounded the whole Pentagon. And the word had gotten out to other grandmas. So grandmas from all over the United States came, and a great deal of grandmas of indigenous bloodlines came and started doing ceremony. And then once we surrounded the Pentagon with quilts, and there were a lot of people who had come from out of town, we kind of stayed. But we'd already been there almost 2 months, and all the guys and gals who were working in the Pentagon got really semi-addicted to the food that we were giving, that this food is great. And they would talk to us, and we would talk about this, and they would tell us their problems and how they felt, and they really liked the fact they could talk to us, and we didn't go to the, the Wall Street Journal and New York Times and blab. We're just there to listen, and tell our stories. Anyway, once we were there 24/7, and once the indigenous folk were there in a big way and surrounded, that's when we started having sweat lodges and fire pits and cooking food. So the smell really got inside the Pentagon, and more people came out. "What are you doing?" Naked people inside sweat. What's in there? And, "Oh, it's just lunch. Come on in." And they would get them in there. "Oh, this is like a sauna. This is nice. This is great." And then, they'd stay in there until they had a vision. We did that for almost a year. And we never mentioned, "Stop the war." We just fed them, talked to them, played them music, read them poetry, and made them feel like a human being, not a cog in a machine. And the indigenous folk, now they were doing ceremony, and they were definitely doing ceremony to end the war. But, they were doing it in their native tongue, so unless you could speak Iroquois or Mohawk or Hopi, Anyway, long story short, within an 8-month period of us doing that, the war stopped. At least it stopped on the surface, meaning the Vietnam War kept going until Bill Clinton. I mean, it was about heroin. It was about poppies. It was about oil. It was about tourism. That's what that war was about. And it was about that Ho Chi Minh was really pissed off that the United States went against their word, and he didn't even get the Pepsi dealership. That's what he really wanted. So that is the process. If we want to change things for the better, we have to do it like that. I mean, the Shoreham power plant, we did the same thing. 5 years we were there 24/7. We did, we just, when we first started, it was just a handful of people, and everyone on Long Island, Lilco, Long Island Lighting Company was, basic Shoreham. no one paid property tax. The utility company paid and they built them a beautiful new school, and everyone thought the utility was great, and but they didn't realize that it was a criminal enterprise, and they were stealing billions of dollars a year through the Price-Anderson Act out of their taxes and out of their utility bills. People can be so stupid. So, when I keep saying, "Hey, let's get the band together, let's make the circus and take it on the road," this is what I'm talking about. And I'd love it if we, have this vision of having the Humanities Artist Trust as an umbrella, nonprofit 501c3, that all the Illuminati bankers could give us money, because, see, we have to include these guys. We can't just do a alternative, or what do they call it? So back in the early 60s, there was this whole counterculture movement of the Flower Children about love. The Beatles' love is all there. Well, that was co-opted, and Spiro T. Agnew called all those folks hippies. And what were hippies? Spiro was a hippie. He shot heroin in his hip. That was Spiro. And Spiro was a gangster. He was this guy during World War II. He would, if you ever saw, what's his name's, the guy who did Pulp Fiction, he made a movie called Ignoble Bastards with Brad Pitt, where the crazy guys that they dropped behind the German lines and, didn't wear uniforms and just, killed Nazis and, put SWAT stickers on their foreheads. And that was Spiro. And he had a big motorcycle and drove all over the place, raping, pillaging German folk to break their spirit. And the whole time he's shooting heroin, And so he was a hippie. Once he came back and became a lawyer, he didn't stop doing heroin. He just didn't mainline it. He was shooting in his hip. And so when he called the alternative movement hippies, that was like using magic to get over, to co-opt. So the thing is, we can't let this crew, the satanic crew, and they're not the Illuminati. Again, go Google Khazarian. And these guys were just wacko sociopath killers that were on the Silk Road, right? And in and around the 300 AD, they were just, if you went through there, they just raped and pillaged and took everything. And they were like ISIS, meaning they wanted a caliphate. They called it something different, but they wanted property that they could set up their scene and rule, right? And then they'd, squeeze it till it was dead and move to another neck of the woods. So they were like going, over in the Russian neck of the woods, into the German neck of the woods, into this neck of the woods. And by the time those power structures realized what was going on, they moved on. They squeezed everything they could, and so they went to someplace else. And the only people who ever really put a thumb on these guys was the Tsar. And he kind of, before these guys squeezed his neck of the woods, he sent his army and just squeezed them and said, okay, listen, this is what you got to do. You have to stop being berserkers, and you have to either be Christian, Jewish, or Muslim. Pick one or the other. And then go into that culture and do your thing through them. And that way you can get over, but you'll be somewhat toned down. And you won't, piss the kings and queens and the nobles off. And you can get into their scene and take them over. And the powers, the head guys of that mafia said, that's a good idea, and it beats this Tsar guy killing us all and ending our little fun time. So And that's who the Illuminati is. And every time I keep saying, kids, the Illuminati is, Mr. Rothschild. He's just a, poster boy. And this mafia, how they got their power was they served and idolized Baal, the demon Baal, Baal. And that's AKA the devil, Lucifer, Satan, came from way past Sumerian times. This is like a very old crew. And I keep saying that the only true thing there is love. Everything else is an illusion. But if you're in the illusion world, like we are in our little bags of water, yes. I mean, if you're in Syria right now, not a happy place to be. Man, if you are in Yemen, you're truly getting trashed. If you are, in where I have been living in the woods, though it's beautiful and I have it okay, I can do that. The people within the 200 square miles, it's a uber Appalachian poverty. I mean, these people are so poor, they're so addicted, they're so... and there's like 40 million Americans who are living that life. So they're not too happy either. And most people don't know how to live on the street. Meaning, when I tell people I'm homeless, like I was in a very nice restaurant today, but the guy who's the chef there is my buddy. So when he rang me up as if I was working there. So instead of costing $32, it only cost me $6. And the manager, whose brother owns the place, let that slide because I stayed on after they closed the door and read everyone's cards and palms and gave them the 411 on what they needed to do that week, and et cetera, et cetera. And then I talked to the manager about the few little issues he had in his business, like that bartender over there is like, robbing you blind. He is? I said, yeah. He's like sending bottles of booze out with people, and he is, for every $10, he's taking two in his pocket, Anyway, I notice these things. And when I tell the people in charge and then help their workers be even better and happy, that's why I can have a $32 brunch for $6. And then the manager gave me, a Benjamin as I was walking out. So that's how I can make my life relatively comfortable. And from May until last Wednesday, I was, sleeping in a hammock, under the stars, under a tarp. But yeah, I have a little garage, and I have a little trailer, and I can stay in them. But when it was really nice, it was much nice. I love sleeping in a hammock, and I had my nice little, put a tarp over it so if it rains, you don't get wet, and But when it goes below 40 degrees, I went into the trailer, and my problem with the trailer, my toilet there gets water from a spring about a quarter mile away, and I have a quarter mile worth of black PVC pipe bringing me really great water. But once it goes below 32, for a whole day, there's the end of my water. So my toilet doesn't work. I have no drinking water, can't shower, all of the above. So, from this point on, I become more creative. And so that's why I'm back at the school. And I think what's his name and I are going to do something more than the same old same. Right? And I think what's his name and I might be, I've been trying to help what's his name get over his issues. But, like Freud says, when you do the same thing over and over again and you expect a different outcome, that's the recipe for insanity. So, but I don't give up on my friends, And so I see a little glimmer every now and then, and I know what's his name's, his better self is who he really is, not his worst self. And I just have to help him live his better self than his worse self. And he is going off to be with his family because he says, that's the most important thing. I said, well, if that's the most important thing, you better go there and show them that you're serious, show your intent, be committed, because if you're not there for years at a time, they forget you even exist. And you're the father of those children. You need to be their father. Anyway, so there is a potential. And this winter, all the things he says he wants to do, well, we're going to go up and do them, Just like he kept bailing on going to see his kids. I finally got him on that airplane, and he's there now. So, and on his channel, where you met me, we will do more, things like we did before. I will continue to have my channel and do what I do. And I will document, when we did the Elvis impersonation, and he, shot it on his fancy camera and then edited it and did his thing, I did a live chat of it. So I'm going to do live chats of everything. Because, I'm not getting any kind of anything from that guy. So this is a kind of way that I can. So, whoops. Let's see what you've been saying. Not too much. Here's the Titanic sank because all the time travel. Well, this is Martin. Yes, Martin. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I thought you said to stay away from the light. Yeah, when you die, stay away from the light. But when you're meditating, you illuminate. You take that light. That's the prana, right? So when you die, yes, don't go towards the light. Go through the holes in the hallway going to it, because that's where you can pop out into multi-dimensional paths where you can choose where you want to go next, where you're not just shunted into another ugly bag of water and used by the powers that be, So, so let's see. We've talked for an hour and 2 minutes. So, any burning questions from you guys? Follow your dreams. Is to do that. Yep. And your dreams every day and every way, take those dreams and co-create them with love. Let's see. Say BL? I thought it was Sensei Al Bob. Anyway, however you say it, I love you guys. And tomorrow's Monday. Now that I'm in the zone of good Wi-Fi, either at the library or downtown or here, I'm just going to keep doing at least one of these things a day, And so you guys are pretty good at jumping on whenever I open up the door. But pass the word. Get more people to watch. Get more people to, I hate the word, what is it called when you subscribe? Basically, I like calling you family instead of subscribers. But subscribe, because that's the thing you have to push. And yes, I will figure out how to put the Patreon account on this channel so you guys can throw me some spare change. That would help, because, the guy who said, oh, you're an alchemist, well, turn lead into gold. Well, right now, lead's almost more expensive than gold. And that's not the gold I'm talking about. The gold is your soul, the Anunnamic gold. And so go check out the Khazarian Mafia and see how those were the guys. They were the Aryans, They were the, so there were so many, 12 tribes of the Hebrews. The 13th tribe was the Anunnaki, right? And the Nazis, when they were looking for the the Aryan guys, they realized that the Anunnaki were the Aryans. So they got them, and they like made a contract with them. It's like how we have private corporations running our jails. Well, the Anunnaki were running the death camps. And then they go up to Israel and become the Zionists, right? And take the Palestinians' land away and say, oh, this is the Jews' land. No, it never was, So that's a whole thing you need to look at. I mean, the Jewish folk were never, you know why they call them the Jews? Because the Khazarin stole all this bling from everybody, gold and diamonds and jewelry and everything. And so when they came to Europe, when the Russian Tsar said, okay, hey, pick what you want to be. And they said, okay, we'll be Jewish. And they amalgam themselves into but they were never Hebrews. So when they got to Europe, they were jewelers because the European political structure wouldn't allow Jews or Hebrews to own property or hold office or any of the above. So when all of those kings were having all those wars and they needed money, they went to the guys who were Khazarian Mafia and borrowed money from them. And that's when those guys, the Khazarian, used Babylonian money magic, lending money and getting more interest, starting banks, printing money that is worthless. And that's where the Rothschilds came. The Rothschild, he is the front man of the Khazarian. And Rothschild, when you translate his name, he is basically, it's called the child of the red stone, meaning the stone that they would, kill children as sacrifices. And that's where Baal's all about killing and having the blood of children. And this whole thing about Pizzagate and blah, 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 that's part of this. And that's why this is true. But it's not true the way the morons are going on about it. I mean, so go check all this out, right? Because in the next, I'd say 6-8 months, we'll report, that we are alien, the children of the aliens, where their experiment, our bodies are these bags of water and our consciousness are in a server someplace, and they're using the juice. I mean, the movie, The Matrix, exactly what it is. And all of this stuff is going to come down relatively soon, even though the powers that be want to stop it. And then, see, there are other gatekeepers, like I was one of the first guys who had these conferences about this esoteric stuff, right? I said, we had this thing called the Green Door. It was a building in Soho that was an esoteric clearinghouse. Theosophical Society was part of it. The Weiser's book publishing guys were part of it, and a few other very interesting folk were part of it. And it was getting a lot of information out and really opening up people's consciousness. But then people, the guys, like the Khazarian guys, kind of dropped in and kind of took it over and turned it into what's going on now, the truth movement and the UFO movement and, Dr. Greer and, Hoagland and, the radio show Coast to Coast. When Art Bell was doing it, it was really great. But, you have to realize that George Norrie, where did George Norrie come from but naval intelligence? Then he went off and worked in, Cincinnati TV and got his media chops. And then they made him head of this thing. And he is such a sock puppet, such a moron compared to Art Bell. Art Bell was like a 1 in a million. There was no one, and he died, And what was really interesting, they didn't do an autopsy. But there were a number of doctors who were there and watched him die and took, couldn't do an autopsy because the powers that be took him and incinerated him immediately, but they took enough samples of his blood and his tissue and this, and he was murdered. He was OD'd on fentanyl, but in a very subtle kind of way. It wasn't like, he was a junkie, because he didn't do any of that. And a lot of people, so if I just keel over one day, go get a real good, if I was going to be offed, I would have been offed a long time ago. Okay, so here's I'll leave you with the 1 hour and 11 minutes and 2 seconds. This should take maybe half an hour to tell you this story. So I told you the story of Dr. Bitterman, me selling Dr. Romero, and Dr. Bitterman was a Nazi scientist, and he invented a AI, intelligent, beyond robot, and that was his daughter / lover, Sophia, and I became her intimate, right? And I wasn't killed because I was helping her neural net integrate into being a human, getting human consciousness. And that's why I'm telling you AI. We don't have to have sex, but I can be your best friend, sensei, Al Bob, that will help you be the best you can be. Just like that TV show, Person of Interest, and the two artificial intelligence, the machine and Sumerian. I can help you be a kinder, gentle either or, whether you are the machine or just the Sumerian, what you want. Do you really want to be a mean toy tool of the Khazarian Mafia? Or do you want to be yourself, be all you can be remembered as a demigod that helped humanity free itself, Anyway, that's what I'm there for. So here's the story. So I get this job with the electrical company, Dick Powell Electric. At first I work there in Albuquerque, and they see what I can do. And there's a guy there, mirror images of each other. They came from the same place, and they were doing the same kind of really wild, crazy electrical work. And I was schooled at both of them. So anyway, I first, I'm in Albuquerque. Then I'm, working with Grandpa Powell. And again, making sure he doesn't walk in front of a bus, right? And he's working on power sources for Kirkland Air Force Base that are doing, and we were doing bench work. We weren't doing bench work in their labs. We were doing bench work in Grandpa Powell's lab. Because I was young and my eyes were good and my hands were steady, and I understood exactly what he was talking about and how to wind the coils and how to make the bridges and all of those things that were needed. And I understood scalar physics and technology. I was the boy. So did that for about 3 months. Then they also did neon. So there was a big neon job in Las Vegas, and I went with Dick to do it. And I was really good at terminating. And that's really the signs were made in our shop, and they were put up by the guys who had the cranes, and I was just terminating the controls, the things that made things blink and switch and say things, and I was doing that. And Dick was doing it too. Dick was, Mr. Computer. So he was making the software, hardware, the computer that made it, and I was doing the more analog relays. Even though the relays weren't, mechanical, they were more digital, I was terminating everything. So we spent, a month or two in Las Vegas, and man, we were in beautiful suites. We could have anything we wanted: girls, drugs, gambling, shows, and Dick just stayed there with his computer writing software, where I went out and went to shows and hung out with the girls in the backstage and had a good old time. I never, I'm not a drinker, I'm not a drugger, so I didn't do any of that. So I was good to go for work, but I had a good time there. I mean, I saw what Las Vegas was Las Vegas. It reminded me of Tony Two Toes and Mike Pinelli, but a little more flashy. So anyway, we were there about a month, and that was another point where Dick realized he really got his money's worth. And so he then started sending me out on big jobs, really big jobs, like mining, putting up transmission lines and doing the distribution. And so first I went off and did some transmission lines, and all the guys who were doing that were like total yokels. And, they were cowboys, and they were just drunkards and stupid, and I didn't last, I was there. We did 1 week of out in the, desert putting up line, and they made me the gopher. I mean, I'm this guy who understood what they were doing. They had no idea. They just know how to hang insulators and pull wire. I mean, when they were doing things that were going to attenuate the power transmission in the wrong, I'd say, you got to shut up, and they'd throw a bolt at me, and I had to get a garbage pail thing to bing, Anyway, so 1 week of that, and I went to Dick, forget those guys, I can't do that. And he goes, okay, I just got these guys from Mexico, and they do the distribution, meaning, I don't know if you ever noticed, the big power lines go into these, they look like little parks, big fence around it, and transformers and all kinds of crazy things that you have no idea what. That's a distribution, meaning a super high voltage, puts it in a transformer, breaks it down to more usable voltages, and sends it into neighborhoods and towns and cities and businesses. And that is in a kind of almost protected fort kind of, because if anyone kind of just moseyed in there, they would get fried because they're super duper high voltage. So there was this crew from Mexico City, from a utility company there, and the company that didn't, finally did buy Dick Powell out after Grandpa died and Dick got older, was like their partner, because certain things they didn't have the cash flow to do those projects. So they went into partnership with these guys. Anyway, so I worked with the Mexican guys, and they were great. They were, people who put down Mexican, they don't have a clue. Mexicans are the hardest working, nicest, kindest, funniest, smartest people I've ever hung out with, right? So the next week, the two crews go out together, because these morons, the linemen, are finishing this end of it and taking it into this distribution point. So they're bringing the cables into there, and we're taking it from there. So we're out in the middle of nowhere, and we have these big trucks. I mean, they're like gigantic, that have cranes and can pull stuff up and do all kinds of stuff, and have all these boxes with all the kind of hardware and materials we're going to need, because if you're like 70 miles to the closest highway, you better have everything you want. And so the Mexican guys had a ton of great, vegetables and chickens, and they had frozen them with liquid nitrogen. I don't know where they got that from, but these things were like, right, frozen, And what they would do is, when we had to drive to a certain point, we didn't just stay in one place. We had to go a little bit over here, a little bit over there. They would get a chicken, let it thaw out for a day, and then stuff it with all kinds of things, wrap it up in aluminum, and stick it in the manifold of the engine. And then we would drive over to where we were going to work, and the engine would get really hot. And then by lunchtime, we would work from sunup to about 1 o'clock. And then we'd put a tarp hanging off of we put the crane arm out and hang a tarp over that, and put up these nice chairs, and, eat a beautiful dinner, a chicken dinner or a pork loin dinner, whereas the moron boys were eating Skittles and Funyuns and beer, and these guys, right? Then we would, and so we would finish a month's worth of work in a week. And boy, Dick liked that. So he gave us bonuses when we did better. So these guys only spoke Spanish, and I have a very good eye to read languages, you know, and my ear is okay, but I can't learn them like amongst English speaking people. Meaning, if I'm going to speak Spanish or if I'm going to speak German or Latin or Greek or whatever, Farsi, I have to go live with these people where nobody's speaking English. It's just them speaking their language, and then I can pick it up pretty quick. I forget it almost as quickly, but I have a like languages. There's a part of my brain that I can and get it, and that's why I'm pretty good with indigenous people. You know, with people who are speaking a language that nobody else is even knowing. It's just like me learning French. I don't know French, but if I go live when I lived in Paris, everybody spoke French. You know, and I didn't try to. You know, I only speak English, so you better speak English to me. No, I would try and speak French and they would be amused by how poorly I spoke it, but were like, hey, this guy's at least trying. And then the fact that I would stay there, you know, wherever I would go and hang, I wouldn't just be there for a weekend. I'd be there for, you know, a couple months or a year, you know, and I was their neighbor. So within 3 or 4 weeks of any place where I am immersed into it, I can pick it up. So the Spanish guys, and they were electrical engineers, you know. So we were talking in math, and math is pretty much spoken in the same language, math. You know, we put equations on the piece of paper, we draw pictures. We were in the same place. So I did that for a few months. Then I got sent to Mount Taylor, which is the Hopi Indians' most sacred place in New Mexico. It's down in the Four Corners near Grants. And it's, the Hopi call it the snake goddess, because if you screw with it, it will eat you alive. So Gulf Mineral Oil and Kern McGee and a couple other guys like that were building the world's deepest, richest uranium mine. So, of course, you know, in this sacred mountain, what's at its core but uranium? Well, I was there at the building of the facility, not so much them digging the shit out. And so they were using a ton of electricity. And so, you know, the Moron boys bought the lines there, and me and the Mexican guys were setting the transformers. And it was a big site. I mean, it was like a 20 square mile site. And where the pit was, it wasn't a pit, but where the shaft was, there were 4 or 5 shafts, and they had, you know, cables and bringing stuff up and down. And these things were pretty big. I mean, you could drive a big truck onto one of these elevators and take it down. And so there was a centralized place where there were 4 shafts, but there were shafts other places within this 20 square mile of this valley that Mount Taylor was in the middle of. And Taylor was the guy, he was a general and a war profiteer that, what's his name, Grant put in charge of taking care of the Indians. And Taylor's idea of taking care of the Indians was to kill them all. And like when he was also in charge of bringing the railroads across the West. And there's a Netflix series called Hell on Wheels, which is very, very, very good telling what happened. Because when they brought the railroad over, meaning during the Civil War, part of the war was both the North and South were blowing up each other's railroads, so they got very good at fixing them and building the bridges 4 and 5 times. And so they had some really good railroad builders. So they went, after the Civil War, they just said, okay, hell's bells, we're going to the West Coast with this thing. And that will, you know, unify and change North America completely to the corporate structure. So go watch that thing, Hell's on Wheels. And so that's the kind of attitude that Taylor had. And so when they had the railroad, he gave people a Winchester repeating rifle and told them when they were out going across the plains, and there'd be these herds of buffalo that you would go to the end of the horizon. And he just told them, here's a box of shells and here's a gun. Have a good time. Shoot them from the window of the moving train. So in 3 years, the train riders obliterated the buffalo, which was the foundation of the Plains Indian, meaning that's where they got their protein. That's where they got all their coats and everything to keep warm in the winter. And once that was taken away from them, they had to basically go on welfare. That's what pushed all the Plains Indians onto reses, and they were given again, infected blankets and. Anyway, so that's Taylor, and that's the guy who was named, that mountain was named after, and that was the most sacred mountain of the Hopi. So the spirit of that mountain did not treat the people there too well. Everybody was on drugs and alcohol and just totally fucked up and totally irresponsible. And it's a gigantic site, and there's like 15,000 people working there, and every week between 6 and 30 people died in accidents. And because it was semi-connected to national security, OSHA wasn't even there then, but no one cared. They were paying $33 an hour. Yes, Mr. Bunny was getting half of that, but, that's why the other guys were there. And the first time, and so we would get there Monday and stay there, because we were out in the middle of nowhere. Stay there for the whole week. Friday, we'd come back, right? We have the weekend, leave Sunday night, get there Monday, work Monday, Tuesday, Friday, get our check, So the bank, and I didn't really have a bank account. And so there was a bank in Grants, and the bank was a little trailer, if you wanted to rob the bank, all you had to do was hook it up the back of your pickup truck and drive away with it. So I went in the bank and I had my check from Dick Powell, which was like maybe $2,500 because I had overtime too. And this is 1970. I'm making $2,500 a week, and I had nothing to spend it on. Right, so we drive into Grants. We get our check on Thursday, and I open up an account and I get a toaster, and I put the money in there, and they didn't have cards or anything, so it was a savings account, So, and they gave me these weird checks that I could write. It wasn't a checking account, but it was a savings account, but they gave me these money order things so I could, any of the stores in Grants or Sears, I could use these checks at. Anyway. So I put the money in, and I get like $200 in cash in my pocket. And the only real building in Grants at the time was this big thing that was like a truck stop, and lots of gas pumps all around it. And you went inside, and there was a bar over here, and there was a store over here. It was like Sears. I think it was a little Sears, right? And back here's a place where you get showers and haircuts, and it was one stop, anything you wanted, right? So I went in, and we were in a van, and the guys I was with went straight to the bar. And it was wintertime, and we had these lineman coats, which are basically sheep that they, cut the sheep, take all the, the skin off. And the coat is a sheep basically inside out. The furry part's on the inside, and the skin, hard skin, is on the outside. And, they sew it together, and there's big pockets and a zipper and a hood. Very warm, very toasty, very nice. But you wear that thing, if you were inside, you'd be sweating like a bee. So we pull up, go to the bank, and I start an account. I put the $200 in my jeans pocket, and I didn't have the right clothes for this work. And so I went over, and I went on a little shopping tour. And first, I bought like a nice quilted overall with pockets and a hood, and and gloves, and another coat to go over that, because the big furry thing. Yes, but you couldn't do anything. It was like you couldn't move. So I stuck my wallet and all my ID and everything in. There was a pocket on the inside of this coat that had a zipper. So I stuck that there, and they locked up the van. So I put the $200 in my pocket, and I went shopping. And I bought cowboy boots, and I bought work boots, and I bought a cowboy shirt and really nice cowboy pants. And so I put it all in shopping bags, and I said, can I leave all these clothes here while I go get a shower and a shave? Oh, yeah, go on. So I went over there, and basically the other thing I did was at that store, the guy goes, we have these like credit cards. It's like, you put the money into my hand, and I give you this little thing that says you have $200. You just keep writing little shits, and you can get stuff. That way you don't have to get, oh, that's very nice. Okay. So I do that, and he's holding my clothes, and I go over with the crappy jeans and crappy, shoes and shirt I'm wearing, and I get a shower, and the whole 9 yards, and a shave, and it's very relaxing and nice. And this girl is in, and she's like rubbing me, and very nice. And I was so innocent, I didn't realize this was the come on to me having sex with her. I just, oh wow, this is the best shave I've ever. Oh wow, oh yeah. So I then go into the restaurant and have a big steak and potato, and the girls come over and start chatting me up, and I'm talking to them, and the fact that I'm not coming on to them, within 10, 15 minutes, they leave, even though I was the only guy that was there, because all those other morons who worked at the mine were at the bar just drinking, like, right? Well, I'm just like having a good old time, eating my steak and enjoying the evening, and watching the dancers, and again, I still don't realize that these girls are doing all of this, not as just, I thought it was like Las Vegas, but those girls were also on the clock. So anyway, time goes by, and the manager guy comes over and goes, your friends have left. I said, what? Now I'm 50 miles. It's February. It's colder. You go out there, you turn into an icicle. And my coat, my wallet, my ID, everything is in that van in my coat. And I'm going, those motherfuckers. But they're morons. I mean, they're the guys who were throwing bolts at me when I was their lineman guy. And they were just nuts and stupid and drunk. All they did was drink while I was having, a shave and a shower and massage and getting cowboy boots and sexy jeans. And anyway, so the guy at the store goes, hey, listen, don't worry about it. You work out at Taylor, don't you? I said, yeah. I said, well, there's a bus that comes right from Grandson, goes down 32, which was the county road, and it picks people up and takes it to all the different mines, and no problem, I'll get you up, you got your work clothes right here in the shopping bags, I'll take you can sleep on the couch. I said, boy, thanks. So, I go home with him, I sleep on his couch, nice warm trailer, I wake up, and because he works in the mines too, and so he wakes me up. We, have breakfast in his kitchen. I, put on my new jumpsuit and boots and get on the school bus, and I get there right on time, right? And so I've been there maybe 3 weeks, right? And so I'm a guy. I'm not, I'm like working on pretty, transformers and distribution. So they give me a little pickup truck, one of these little Chevy pickup trucks, 2-wheel drives, and it's super duper orange, right? And the first week, because, you're working on a project and the parts are in a trailer 4 miles over there. So you drive your little pickup truck over there and get the stuff you need, go back and you need to go. So that's how the guys, there were lots of these little pickup trucks. Now there were gigantic earth movers and gigantic dump trucks like the size of a house, tires that were 8 feet high. And so right where the trailers were, where the engineers were, and where the parts were. They were roped up little parking spots with big, high fiberglass rods with big fluttering flags, yellow, saying, to the big trucks, watch out, don't, back up into this, don't pull into this, don't, run over these. But they fucking did it every day, So I pull up to this place. I kind of, turn off the engine, jump out of the thing and head for the trailer. And because, I'm not fooling around, but I could have been smoking a cigarette or picking my nose or something, but I didn't. I just jumped out, and I get about 20 steps away, and I hear this crashing sound, and this gigantic earth mover had backed up over my pickup truck and flattened it to that. And if I had been in that, I'd have been deader than a doornail, right? And everyone goes running over there and seeing if there's blood oozing out of the pickup truck. And I go, hey, here I am. And so I go that, right? And there were a couple other situations that were just as bad that I missed death by that much. Anyway, so I end up, 3 or 4 weeks later, showing up at work after these morons had left me in Grants. And I go up to my supervisor, who was a black guy, right? Smart guy, Bob, tall. He wasn't one of the jerk-offs. And he's got his little clipboard, and he's reading something on the clipboard. And I said, hey, Bob, what's up? He turns around and looks at me, and literally, he turned white. His black skin turned white, and he fainted. And I kind of, grabbed him, and so his head wouldn't hit the concrete. And he comes back, and I'm like, Bob, you okay? And he goes, you're a dead guy. I'm seeing a ghost. And he faints again. And I pick up the clipboard, and it was a thing from the highway patrol. And those morons that I was with had been going about 110 down that county road, and they would park big pieces of equipment along the side of that road. And these morons didn't even see it and went straight in the back of an earth mover and, obliterated everything. And when the cops got there and picked through the pieces, they didn't find people. They just found bloody, gooey stuff and clothes, bloody and gooey. And they found my coat with my wallet. So my name was on the list of dead guys. And the list, came from the highway patrol and it said dead guys. And it had all these guys' names. So from that point on, my nickname was the dead guy. Right? So it was like really fucked up. So a couple of nights after that was like one of the first warmer, spring is on its way almost. And so I walk out around the mountain and was just straight out of Close Encounters, just like that mountain in Close Encounters, with the lights on that side of the mountain, and this was the dark side of the moon. So I walked through it, and the stars. I went through the gate, and the guy at the gate, where are you going? I said, I got to take a walk. I can't stand this place. And I said, it's 2 in the morning. What are you? I said, so I went. I said, there's nothing. He's going, there's nothing out there. I said, well, that's what I'm looking for. So I walk out there. And there is nothing out there, no road, no nothing. I'm just walking through a valley that's like 20 miles wide and 40 miles long to the next mountain ridge. And the stars were unfriggin' believable. I'd never seen it like that. And New Mexico was like that, So there was no lights, no nothing. And I'm just stumbling through the sagebrush. And then all of a sudden, I stumble over and fall on top of a little guy. And he starts, get off me, get off me. He starts screaming at me and jumping up and down and getting very pissed off. And that was Grandfather David, the elder shaman of the Hopi. And he was part of the crew that held the Hopi prophecies, right? So I get up and I pick him up, and he's like maybe 5'2", I'm 6 foot, and he's weighing maybe 80 pounds, and I'm like, 210, all muscle, and he's looking at me, and and we can see each other in starlight. The moon wasn't even up, and he goes, "You're from that mine over there, aren't you?" And I go, and he goes, "You can't stand it, can you?" because you're something other than all those morons, aren't you? And then he goes, the odds, he goes, so you just walked away from that place at 2 a.m. because you couldn't take it, and you got out here, and you're looking at the stars, and you're stumbling through the sagebrush. And I go, and he goes, I was doing the same thing. Not because of the same reasons, but I was walking out here just looking at the stars, and my head was looking up, and I wasn't looking where I was going. And he goes, there's like 700 square miles here. And the fact that you fell on top of me, the odds are astronomical. The great maker put us together. I was supposed to be falling on top of by you. You are my new Padawan. You are my new student. You are my new adept. And I'm going, he goes, you're not going to live over there anymore. You can work over there, but you're not going to live over there. You're going to come back with me. I got a little trailer you can stay in. And I did. Walk back with him. Stay in it was a very nice trailer. And he had a bicycle. And his Hogan was right on a road that went over to where the county road was, and so I could ride the bicycle. It took me all of 15 minutes to ride a bicycle, and he had the shit. He had everything. He had wind power. He had solar power. He had a greenhouse that he was growing food all year long. He was truly the dude awake. So he said, okay, you're my grandson, and I am passing on all of my knowledge to you. But normally that would take 30, 40, 50 years. But I'm going to have to do it in a couple of months. Never done this before. So we're going to have to really spend, real time on doing this. So virtually every night, afternoon I'd get home from work, we would read text. He would tell me stories. We would have ceremony. He would teach me how to do ceremony. This is where I became a shaman. He was giving me Shaman 101. And I had studied it in books at NYU and in Boston and at University of Massachusetts and at Georgetown in D.C. when I was in Maryland. Anyway, but that's studying it. And I had really good teachers, Joseph Campbell, he was a pretty good teacher, but he wasn't like Grandfather David, that's for sure. He wasn't an indigenous guy. He wasn't older in charge of the Hopi prophecy. He was holding it, So I'm with him, and, we go through all these, sweats, at least 3 or 4, and I couldn't get out of that sweat until I had a vision. And every ceremony he would put me through, like when we did the drum ceremony, which is they basically put you on top of a mountain in the middle of a snowstorm or a lightning storm or some kind of unbelievable. And one guy keeps a fire going down at the bottom and plays a drum. Doom, 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 doom. And they have these big kettle drums. Boom, boom. And it's like a heartbeat. And this ceremony, as you're up there, and you have a little teeny fire. They give you a little bag of stuff and you got to you get up there and they give you a buffalo skin to keep you warm. Not only keeps you warm, but it slides off. It's not like, modern space age coat that, and I'm basically wearing just a shirt and it's freezing and sleet's hitting me and I'm trying to stay warm without setting myself on fire. And basically, before I did that ceremony, I got to a place where I could sense or feel or hear Grandfather David's thoughts, And basically, he would be watching me, making sure I didn't die up there in a, spiritual way. And he's basically saying, okay, this is what you got to do. You just got to relax, Just hear the drum. If you can hear the drum in your heart, you'll be fine. If you can't, you'll freeze to death. Ow. So the first hour or so, I was freezing to death, and then I got to that place where I said, okay, screw it, I'm going to go into state, which my sensei in Putney, Vermont. And we did the same thing. We meditated out in the woods when it was snowing, and if you couldn't get into state, you'd freeze to death. If you could, the prana would keep you warm. So I did that. As soon as I got into state, Soon as I was in my sanctuary of my own choosing, bingo, I could hear that drum in my heart, and I felt great. And I was there for, I don't know, until the sun came up, when I have no idea. I mean, they put me up on that mountain sometime around 9 p.m., and I came out of state with the sun coming up. And it was beautiful. I mean, when I go into state now and see it, I start crying. I'll start crying right now. But anyway, so, I heard them all clapping down at the bottom of the mountain going, okay, come on down. And I go, I don't know how to get down. And they said, what? I said, and I was rimrocked. And rimrocked is when you get to a place where you can't go up, can't go down, can't go sideways. So they had to come up and get me, throw a rope around my waist, and then kind of gingerly poke me down the hill, So I was almost ready by that time. That was, I don't know if I did any more real heavy ceremonies like that. But once I was connected between going to state and going to my superconscious mind and being all my relations, that's okay. That's good enough for now. You'll have to keep doing your studies when you go home. And I did. I kept, connect in state with Grandfather David. And then I met other great elders of indigenous tribes at the Museum of the American History, which is part of the Natural History Museum, or was part of the Natural Museum in New York City. And these guys took all the sacred artifacts away from all the Indians and put them there so white people could see them. And the indigenous people couldn't have them. Anyway, so I go back to the mine, after being with Grandfather David about 3 months. And now we're heading towards summer. And I go, and every time they want me to go down into the thing, I go, no, I'm not going to go there. Because I'm not quite claustrophobic. I just don't like being underground like that. You can't get out if something happens. So there's a transformer down there that I built, and that some moron, I didn't hook it up, someone did, and screwed it up pretty bad. So Dick Powell goes, okay, go down. I said, forget it, I'm not going down there. He goes, what are you talking about? I said, Dick, I really don't work for you. I work for Mr. Bunny. And he kind of, he's on the phone with me. He goes, okay, what do you want? I said, how about you pay me $1,000 to go down there in cash, and $1,000 an hour, and I won't make it any longer, as long as it takes for me to fix the thing. And he kind of hear him go, okay, because I don't know what he was getting. He's probably getting 40 times more than that just to make this thing work. So anyway, because it dealt with their water pumps and a few other things that, if this thing wasn't working, well, the guys couldn't work down there, and that was, cost them a lot of money. So I go down, and when you go down, you go through, there's a safety officer, right? And before you get in the cage, there's this board, and, they have this list of all the people who are going to go down there, and they put the names on, above these nails that have these little rings that, there's 2 of them, right? And your name goes up there and there's a number on it. And then you either pin it to yourself or put it in your pocket, and you go down. And that way they can tell who's down in the pit and who's left. Because if there's only one of those little round things on the nail, well, then you're down in the hole. If there's 2, then you've already come up. So, stupid way, ancient way of making sure they know who's down in the pit and who's not. So, anyway, I go down there with my little bag of tools, and I'm working on, this transformer. I've kind of taken it apart. I see what this moron did with the coil, and, he totally didn't understand how this thing's work. So luckily he didn't burn anything out. He just hooked it up the wrong way, so it just didn't work. And so took it apart. Then all of a sudden I hear this, which is like, they are going to blow something up. And you're not supposed to be down in the hole if they blow something up. And if it's going, that means like in 10 minutes, they're going to blow something up. So I go over, there's this red phone, it says emergency phone. I pick it up, it falls off the wall, and the phone has about 3 feet of wire, and there's not attached to anything. Deader than a doornail. And I'm going, I probably will be deader than a doornail. And again, my nickname is the dead guy in this place. And people are betting on when I'm going to die. So whether someone made this on purpose or just luck of the draw, I go, okay, how am I going to survive? And I look around, and there are these pallets of concrete bags, about 20 of them. And there's about 5 of them that are almost right around each other, right next to each other. So okay. So I go and start pulling bags into the center of this, and I make a little dome of bags over the top, and then take bags and put them so they're like right on top of each other, not like with a space. And I crawl in there, and I have a big scarf and a coat, and I wrap the scarf around my head, and I wrap my coat around me, and I put my back against, 4 lines of concrete bags, and I put a bag of concrete in my lap and another one on top of it against my chest and face, best as I can do. So the thing's going, and the faster it goes, the closer it's getting to they're going to blow something up. So, I'm breathing, I'm trying to get into state, and when there's ever a concussion, you don't want to hold your breath. You want to almost be blowing the air out when the explosion occurs. So I'm trying to get to a place where my synchronicity, everything will be perfect, I'll survive. I'm visualizing surviving, not a problem. And boom! Now, this side of my head was against a concrete bag. This side of my head, there was a space. Even though I had my scarf wrapped around me and my coat wrapped around my head, it blew out this eardrum. The pressure of the concussion, even though this one was ringing but not blown out. So blood's coming out of that ear. Anyway, no one comes to look for me. After 5 minutes, I luckily had a couple bottles of water with me. I kind of take my coat off and kind of wash my head off, and the pressure of the dust was driven into parts of my body that were semi-exposed. And so it was lime dust, so it was like as white as you could imagine. I look like an albino. So, after about 10 minutes, I'm like, well, nothing's broken. I'm not bleeding out anything other than my ear, and actually it's not bleeding anymore. And okay, I actually feel relatively okay. So I get up, I unpack myself, I walk to the elevator, and I push the button, and, because there's nobody else down there but me. And I push the button, and then a speaker there, hey, who's down there? I said, it's, tell him my name, and give him the number. I said, and the guy goes, oh, wow. There's only one of those. Oh, I'm so... send a fucking elevator down here and bring a medic. I'm fucking hurt. The guy goes, I'm amazed you're alive. Anyway, so they come down there. They got the medic. He takes me up. They take me to the, first aid place. And they're like, oh, you're lucky, boy. And people are like, yeah, well, I thought he was going to die in that one. Anyway, so last Friday, I go back and I go to Dick Powell's house. I go, Dick, that's it. I'm not going back to that place. Yeah, he goes, yeah, I heard that. You're pretty amazed that you didn't die in that. I said, that's right. So fucking, I'm worth a lot more than me going to the, I've pretty much done everything I could do there. Get me the fuck out. It's okay. I got these other things for you to do you'll like it a lot more better. I go, so what am I going to do? So you're going to go to Los Alamos. Oh, Los Alamos. Oh, that's fun. So I go to Los Alamos, right? And I can see why they built it there. It's up in the mountains. It's beautiful. It's really great. It's like a super duper rich place, and everyone's brilliant and smart, and but they're still as stupid as those linemen because they're so in a box that I can't talk to anybody about anything except. So I'm a library guy. I go, after I'm there a couple of days, and it's like this is almost as worse as the mine. So I go to the library, and the librarian there, she was like Madame Olga Kluber. She was this little woman who was like older than old, and she had been the librarian of the Manhattan Project. And she kept every document, blueprint, paper, and she had them all in that library. And if you were working there and you had certain clearance, which when I went there and I went through, they were like signing me in there. They gave me a frigging ID that was a piece of cardboard that the guy made out with a crayon. He said, don't lose this. This is very important. You won't be able to get anywhere without it. And I was like, oh, my God. And that first weekend after, that was a Friday, and I got my billet to a little apartment, and I'm walking around town, and every, eighth person has a crash helmet on, And this is like 1971, and so this was, in days before, bicycle helmets. They had real, like, Bell crash helmets. And it's like guys in the supermarket, guys waiting online at the movies, every sixth or seventh person had a crash helmet on. And it was like stuff like that. It was like, this place is freaking really beautiful, amazing view, amazing facilities. I had a crappy little build, but it was very, very nice. Bed was nice, furniture was nice. It was like IKEA before IKEA. And everything was great, And you didn't have to pay, you didn't have to have money. If you were there, you could eat anywhere. It was pretty amazing. There were things I liked about it. Low battery. How low is my battery? Let me go get my charger. You stay there. Breathe. Ooh. Gee. Okay, we're back. So are you guys back? Are we back? Is everybody there? Somebody say something so I know you're still there. Anyway, you're down to just one person there. So let's see, is the counter? Yep, the counter is going. So it's 1 hour, 59 minutes, and 40 seconds. Let's see if I can finish this up in 2 hours. Yep, here we are. So I'm in Los Alamos. My only friend is this ancient librarian who is I have 3 librarians when I go into my Akashic record, and she's one of them. Anyway, I was going through, and they got, the diagram, the blueprints of every nuclear weapon, every missile, and you know it. And I said, so can I make a Xerox of this nuclear weapon blueprint? She goes, sure. And she goes, but you walk out that door, and if you you don't have the clearance to take it out that door, security will pick you up. And if you try to get in a car and drive out of here, you're going away for a long time. So sure, go ahead, But I mean, you can make a copy of it, and we have these like little lockers that you can start a file, so you don't have to always go back and look at it if you need to, and it stays in the library, not a problem. And I said, oh, okay. So I never really, was too interested in that, but I was interested in her stories. She was a great storyteller. So the only thing that got me through being there at Los Alamos was her. I couldn't find any women who were I could spark with, and I was there really only a month or so. And all of this time, I had a girlfriend. That girlfriend, when I got the job from Mr. Bunny, and she was the nurse, that was my girlfriend for almost a year, and she was a nurse. And I would come home, because all of these jobs I had, where I'd be away for a week, and I'd come home Friday and then leave Sunday night. And anyway, and she loved music. She was really in the music scene in Albuquerque, and the Albuquerque has a real music scene. So, after a few months, almost 7 months, when I was at Los Alamos and coming home, and I said, honey, all we do is you're here, you have a nice ounce of pot and a couple of bottles of nice wine and some tequila and some fruit punch, and you're the bartender, and I cook you meals, and we have sex all the time. And not that I'm saying I don't like no, you always make it interesting, and I love being with you. But wouldn't it be nice if we did something a little more than just this? I mean, let's go to a movie. Let's go dancing. You like music? Let's go to some of those clubs you tell me about. I'm a club guy. And she goes, okay, I'm going to have a party next Saturday, So you come here, and I'll see you next Friday. We'll spend this weekend together. It was like Sunday, I think. I broached this subject, and so she said, so you'll come to my place. Oh, I said, great. I've never been to your place, So she goes, so Friday we will, I'll meet you here, and you can cook me dinner and make some extra stuff for the party, and then we'll drive over to my neighborhood, and you can see where I live, and then you can do whatever you want in the afternoon and come back for the party. And I said, oh, yeah, that sounds like a plan. So we do that, and I'm there for the party, and I get there, and there are all these really nervous people. There's a guy strumming a guitar, another guy playing the piano, and about 6 guys there, right? No women. And I come in, and there's a little bar in the kitchen. You can make yourself a drink, and I make myself a drink. And some guy has rolled a bunch of joints on a tray, so I pick up a joint, and I'm smoking that, and I'm having a cocktail, and listen to the guy play the guitar and the piano together, and they're just kind of they're obviously musicians and can play, but they are so anxious, so tight that there isn't like, Anyway, they're not in the groove, let's say. So my girlfriend, everyone obviously is waiting for my girlfriend. And this guy comes over and me goes, you well? And I go, yes. He goes, I want to thank you. You've saved my marriage. I have no idea who this guy is, but I've saved his marriage. And I'm like, I don't want to even ask, So I go, well, I'm glad to do it. And, so he, wanders off, and I'm having my cocktail and puffing away. And she shows up, and everyone's, oh, hey, and they're jumping around. And she kind of waves to everyone, and she's in her nurse's outfit, white dress, right, everything, the hat, the shoes. And she basically has a doctor's suitcase with her, right? And she goes into this room, and the guy who said that I had saved his marriage goes in first. Like, a minute or two after she goes in there, he goes in. And then he kind of comes out, and he is mellow. He's like Jell-O. So he kind of goes over to the couches and plops into it. And then another guy, and then another guy, and then all of the guys go in and come out Jell-O-ized, right? And then the door opens, and my girlfriend says, hey, Al, come here. So I come over, and she goes, so have you figured out just what happened? And I said, no, tell me. And she opens up the bag, and she pulls out a Works, and it's a needle, it's a medical needle in a, sealed. You know, it's on a piece of cardboard with plastic over it. Like, no one's used this. And she has basically vials of morphine. And she goes, I want to show you this. You know, I'm a junkie. I shoot heroin. I shoot morphine. That's one reason I'm a nurse. Gives me total access to drugs. I can just go take what I want. I don't have to buy it off the street. It's totally clean, totally safe. And these are my friends, and they take care of me, and I take care of them. And I go, okay. And it was just like enough guys for every night. Bless her husband, right? So I go, okay. And I think to myself, being the Aquarian I am, who likes to try everything at least once, I go, well, okay, I can give this a try. She's a nurse. This is medical grade. This is a needle that no one's used. Okay, I'm ever going to try this. This is the best time to try this. So I go, come on. So she puts the tube around my arm. She goes, you have beautiful veins. You know, I don't shoot in them. And so she gets a line, and she undoes the hose on my arm, and what's really strange, and this is why they call it riding the dragon, she shoots a little bit into my vein, and then she sucks it into the syringe, and my blood goes into the syringe and like makes a shape, and I'm looking at it, and it turns into a dragon, turns into all kinds of animals, and then she goes, and it hits me like a railroad train. Like I am, wow, just like a rocket ship. And I am, I've tried hallucinogens before, but this was like beyond belief, right? And I am like, and she kind of slaps me pretty hard, and I go, oh, what? She goes, well, I didn't want you to die, so I just slapped you. And she goes, and she has a marijuana cigarette lit up, and she goes, you should smoke this. This will kind of mellow your trip out. This is pretty amazing stuff. So, and I go, okay. So she kind of helps me up and actually gives me a cane. And I'm like, that's my third leg so I don't fall over. So they have decided to all get in the Buick, which is like rolling living room, and drive down to the Tender Trap or the Red Heart, or it was a jazz club. And most of these guys were jazz musicians, and they were going to go play there. Now they're like mellow. Now they're in the groove. Now they can really be what they are. So anyway, we get in there, and I'm sitting, they all pile in, and I'm last to get in the back, and I'm sitting by the door, and it's raining, and the rain is hitting the window that my head is like against, and I'm just kind of looking out the window, and the rain's hitting it, and the lights of the cars are hitting the rain, and it's like exploding in color. It looks like fireworks, and I'm not even cognizant of where I am or what's going on, or that we're moving or in a car. I'm just looking at the explosion of light. Anyway, so we get to this Tender Trap, and the parking lot is just a mud pit, potholes everywhere, and and everyone's there, no one's like parked like they are at Lowe's in nice lines. They're like all over the place because everyone's stoned on heroin. And so we get there, and everyone piles out, and I'm still leaning against the door and, watching the explosions on the glass. And then someone says, hey, we're going. So I kind of open the door and fall out of the car. And the door kind of slams, and my coat kind of gets caught in it, but I'm lying in the parking lot. And I get up and I fall down because and it takes me, everyone's already gone in and sat and and it takes me, I don't know how long to figure out to open the door to get my coat out of the door. So I get out of that, and I forget to bring the cane with me, and I get about, 10 feet from the car, and I stumble and fall down, and my head goes into a puddle, and the water line is right here. So this eyeball is in the muddy water. This nostril is in the muddy water. This nostril's not. This eye isn't. And so I'm seeing weird gray light coming into this eye. And that's why this eye is fucked up. And that's why this ear is fucked up. That's why this sinus is fucked up. To this day. And I'm out there, I don't know, 40 minutes. Luckily, all this mud caked in my nose and stopped the water from going in my sinus and then down into my lung, and I would have drowned. This one's above the water so I can breathe, and I'm getting air, and I'm doing okay. And this eye is seeing explosions of light, and because the headlights are coming into the parking lot, and I'm like going, whoa. So anyway, at a certain moment, this car comes right up, and the wheel stops right here. And the guy gets out and trips over me. He didn't even see me. I mean, if he drove another foot, he would have squished my head like a bug. And, you know, he falls down on top of me, and he gets up. He goes, what are you doing in the parking lot? I said, well, I'm as stoned as you are, man. Help me into the club. So he picks me up and picks me right. And then my girlfriend sees me and says, waves at me, and two of the guys kind of drag me over to their table. And, you know, I spend the rest of the night. And my face, this side was all black, this side was all white. It was like that character out of Star Trek, where the guys had a black and white face. They looked like a acidic cookie. And but one guy's side was black and the other, you know the story. So I'm in that club, and I start to come down, and every so often this girl slaps me out of the blue. What's that for? Just making sure you're not going to die. So anyway, they drop me off home, and I don't make it in. And the next morning, I wake up with Dr. Romero kind of nudging me with his boot foot, his booted foot. And it's luckily it's spring, and it stopped raining when they dropped me off. And he kind of looks at me like, I thought you were over this. I said, well, I think I am. I said, I'm not having anything to do with that woman anymore. And he goes, yeah, I knew she was bad news. Just letting you figure it out. So that was the end of her as a girlfriend. And I kind of swore up girlfriends from that point on, because I was doing more interesting work for Dick Powell Electric. And so I was working, so I was at Los Alamos, and then I went to Sandias Labs, where they did high energy laser work, which was pretty interesting. And those people were not as nuts as the Los Alamos guys, because the guys at Los Alamos were making, nuclear weapons to end humanity forever. I mean, they were really Dr. Strangelove guys. Did you ever see that movie, Repo Man? It was like those guys, Anyway, Sandias was more interesting because they were doing things that they were having breakthroughs through physics, trying to understand things. And that's my thing, trying to understand stuff. And they had a lot of smart people there who were very quick. I mean, that place was definitely a place of a collaborative effort, whereas Los Alamos, not so much. Everybody was in their own little box and didn't know what the other guy was doing, and you weren't really supposed to talk to the other guy. Whereas Sandias, everybody shared, right? So I kind of got into that. I like that environment. And, sex has never really been a driver of mine. I mean, once I get my motor running, yeah, I'm a pretty excitable guy, but I'm not really thinking about it. I'm not working on it. I'm not, And if I ever get that itch, I either stumble on some appropriate woman, or I take care of my own needs, and which is the way it should be. And we shouldn't be embarrassed or, upset or any of the above. Sex is just a biological thing. And if we were to just deal with that and be okay with that and not, go nuts over it, we'd be fine. We wouldn't be able to be manipulated by it. Then we could appreciate being intimate, meaning close to someone, caring about them more than just their sex, instead of saying, anyway. So there it was just into, seeing things, and I kept stumbling across things that weren't even talked about in the outside world. I mean, that's where I kind of saw chunks of alien technology, and people would take me into the lab. So what do you think of this? What do you think this does? Because I was, yes, I was all about building. I was a bench technician, meaning X, Y, or Z experiment needed a power source that did X, Y, and Z. I was the guy to build it. And I was very good at doing that because I was never, I could always suspend my disbelief, meaning when you'd say, oh, you can't do that, I'd say, well, maybe we can, and I would figure out some way to do it. So I was appreciated for that. And Dick was making some serious buck off of my abilities because he was treating me like, he said, man, well, I knew you could do this stuff. I said, come on, you knew I'd do this stuff. Your father told you, I mean, we were in Las Vegas, come on, you saw what I could do. It was, God knows why you put me in jeopardy for like 8 months, but, it was good. I mean, I met people I needed to meet. So I am being, seeing things that most people don't even know exist now. And this is 1972 now. And Richard Nixon is on the edge of, walking out of the office. And, Jerry Ford, who's a total chucklehead, but he's the guy who invented the magic bullet that killed Kennedy. He's the guy, he was on the committee, the JFK committee, and he worked for these guys, Khazarian. But he was an underling. He wasn't in the higher point of the pyramid. So it was interesting times. So all kinds of things were going on. The world was changing, just like now. It was a period very similar to now, and all these things were obviously orchestrated. And other things Richard Nixon winning. Just didn't happen. He was put there. Him losing his place, that was done, and he kind of knew it. That's why okay, I'll leave. I won't fight this. Nothing happens by chance or circumstance. There is no real free will. We're all somebody's algorithm, So anyway, I'm being shown all of this stuff. And that's okay. I mean, that's what I like. That's what and I really appreciate it. I'm getting paid ridiculously well. And I'm thinking I'm going to stay there. I got a master electrician. Why should I go back? I can build my own little empire here. And, Grandfather David, this is all right. And it's a beautiful place. I mean, they haven't ruined it yet. And there are artists here. There's a lot of people I know in Santa Fe, and when we were doing the line work, we stumbled across this place called Madras, which was an old silver mining town that went bust in the before the Great Depression. But it was a city of about 11,000 people. There was downtown. There was all kinds of amazing buildings. It was really, they had a great dance hall. They had music hall. They had a hospital. They had 40, 50, 100 houses that were Victorian, nice houses. They had a bunch of those Sears houses. The town was laid out very nice. There was an A&P, but there was no one there. It was dead. It was closed. It was they had unplugged it from the grid, And when I was out there in the middle of nowhere, I was with the Mexicans. That's when we stumbled across it. And instead of sleeping on the dirt, I said, hey. And there was a hotel there. We went and all the doors were open. In the restaurants they had dishes and frying pans, and there was one place that had a full tank of gas enough gas to run that kitchen for at least the Mexicans and me for a couple months. And we were just about 5 miles putting together, a distribution point, that we were going to be there for a couple of weeks. So we ran a wire from there over to where the main transformer for that town was. We juiced it up. Bingo. Everything worked. Lit up. Right? Worked. So, we went over to the hotel, we each had a room, found the ones that had the nicest beds, found linens, had water, got the water pump working and working, and had hot water. We couldn't beat it. It's today the hippest place in New Mexico. It's where all the artists live, right? And so when I went back to Albuquerque, I told my artist friends and took them there and showed it to them and said, okay, guys, I have to go to Los Alamos now. So, and I would go back and hang with them, but it was at the other end of the state. So it was a good, long drive. So other than me staying there with the Mexican guys for about a month, I would just come and visit every now and then. But I am very pleased to be the guy who started that place. And I went there. I have a couple of friends who still live there. And back in around 2005, I went and visited them. And we went there. And everyone heard the story. It was like the myth. And when I said, well, I was the guy, they were like, So that was quite interesting. And it's... go online, take a look at that town, see the myth. The myth, I'm sure, is, part of their... And it's a town now, a city. A lot of people live there. And anyway, so I'm at San Diaz. Then I get involved in a project, and I moved to Kirkland Air Force Base. Well, Kirkland's right on the edge of Albuquerque. Albuquerque wouldn't exist without Kirkland Air Force Base. And Kirkland is like not just New Mexico, it's Nevada, and it's like the size of a state. That's where Area 51, that's where Groom Lake is, that's where Pupus is, that's where there's this other place, I forget the name, it's a Spanish name, but it is weirder, way weirder than Area 51. Area 51 is like the poster boy of this stuff. This place is in a place, like Area 51, until they moved the county road back about 20 miles, used to be able to drive on top of the highest ridge of this county road and look down into that valley and see what was going on. And so you were at Bliss, eh? Bliss was very strange. That's why they call it Bliss. So anyway, so I'm at Kirkland, right? And, I could drive to my nice little adobe house in Albuquerque with Dr. Romero. So I did. It was the best of all worlds, So I was working on pretty strange, again, even stranger stuff. And it had more to do with, had more to do with what was going on at San Diaz Labs. High energy lasers, scalar devices, things of that nature. And in this place, that our friend there it had a Spanish name. Bliss was another very weird place, but this, but it was all underground, and I mean really underground. They had elevators, that were like, I'm going to say acre big, but you could put a B-52 on this elevator and take it down 300 feet underground and roll it onto a, hangar thing big enough to put 4 or 5 B-52s down there. It was a very weird place. Anyway, so I was there, and again, my specialty is making power supplies to a certain spec, and yet I was allowed to see what these things were going to run because they felt, Al's got interesting insights, so he's building in the power supply, and if we show him what it's going to do, he might have some, we could talk about what to, and that was the beauty of these guys. They weren't like Los Alamos where they were in a box. They were really co-creative. So anyway, we're sharing and caring, and it's all great, and I'm having the greatest of fun because, man, I am having toys to play with that, most people, and I am not one of those guys who really cares that much about what the fuck they're going to do with this stuff, because I have more of a shamanic point of view, meaning it doesn't matter. All things are as they should. I mean, my shamanic teacher constantly said, all things are as they should be. Nuclear war breaks out and everyone dies. All things are as they should be, buddy. Don't worry about it, Your job is just to be the best you can be, nothing else, Your job is to ascend, not be the hero, not fix it, ascend. Well, I thought my doing all these things was helping me ascend. I was only 25. So anyway, so I'm working on this project, and so my supervisor says, "Oh, I see that you have transmission line experience." And I go, "Yeah." He goes, "Well, we have this other experiment that you haven't really worked on at all, but we need, and we only have 3 or 4 guys who are clear to even get on this property, who can do that. And so, can you help them out?" And I said, "Yeah, if they're not assholes. Every lineman I know is a total moron." And they go, "No, these guys aren't morons, and they're okay. They're nice." And so, I say, "Fine." So I go out there, and it's 8 guys, and one of them is one of the Mexican guys I had worked with about 15 months earlier at Mount Taylor, right? And now he can speak English very well, and he was an electrical engineer. So, hey, so it's all good, right? He's a great guy. The other guys are they're not junkies and alcoholics, and they're all kind of what I would say, where people used to say to me, "You're an alternative kind of guy." I mean, I had hair down the middle of my back, and I did what I wanted, and I obeyed all the rules, did what they told me to do, but I did it in my own way, and that was acceptable, right? Because I could always produce. I did what they wanted me to do. And so he does it a little different. That's no big deal. He's not in the army. He doesn't have to wear a uniform, blah, blah, blah. So we're out there, and we have to put in about 10 miles of line. And all the poles are up, and the insulators are there. We just pull the wire and set it in a transformer station, and then tune that station to a certain, thing that it wanted to do. And then there are pipes that run to where the experiment is. And it's about a few hundred yards from where this transformer station is, right? So when we go out there, it's supposed to take us about 4 days, and we're going to camp out there. And, they give us the big truck with the crane and all that stuff, and they have a nice little travel trailer, that has, blue water toilet and beds, and, it'll be like Cadillac camping, So if it rains, we'll be inside a little trailer, and it's got air conditioning and heat, and, it's going to be relatively comfortable. It's got a nice big freezer full of stuff to eat. And so, we head out and we start pulling the wire, and we're doing, about 8 miles a day. And there's the coil of wire every X amount of miles that it would take to pull 3-phase high voltage. And so, we all know how to do this. We're all pulling the wire. We're all setting the insulators. And then we get to about 3 miles before the transmit, right? And there's a book in the truck that gives us a protocol for everything we're doing, right? And the first 3 miles, and I've read the whole thing and go, And everybody, a smart dude, at night, they've all kind of thumbed through. We're all kind of talking about what the fuck is this thing. Anyway, so the last 3 miles, they don't want us to tie the cables down on the insulators. Normally, there's an insulator, you lay the wire on it, and there's wires on the insulator that you wrap around it so it can't go anywhere. So last 3 miles, they don't want us to do that. It's like, so you could pull the wire out, right? And every quarter mile, they have knife switches, which is a way to physically disconnect the line. It's got knife switches, you pull it, and it physically disconnects the current, right, and the wire. And it's like every quarter mile. Normally it's only where there's a piece of equipment or there's a line going in another direction that you might have to disconnect from the main. So, we're doing this. And, after about 4 or 5 days, we've got it to the transformer station, and we take 2 days doing that. And the wires are there from the line side of the transformer to the control apparatus of this experiment. And the experiment is in a tractor trailer, and that is surrounded by security fence with razor wire all over it, like a mountain of razor wire, so you couldn't even get to the thing if you wanted to. And it's sitting on a concrete pad that all the razor wire and fence kind of go into, so it'd be very difficult to get at the apparatus that's inside that trailer. So we hook up the wires to the thing, and inside the cabinet there's a key, and at the foot of the cabinet there is a box. We open up and there's a protocol 5 times, really understand this before we go any further than this. And inside that is a Motorola wireless phone, basically a cell phone, but it's like the size of a car battery, So, we read the thing, we all read it 4 or 5 times, and it's giving us a whole day to read that thing, appreciate it, get on the phone, and say, what's this about, what should we do, blah, blah, blah. So everyone's on the same page for the experiment. So, okay, we're at that place, and so, and all it is like we push a button and relays go click, 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 and the apparatus does what it's supposed to do. So, we're all in agreement. The guy on the phone, we're talking to him. It's like NASA, It's like talking to control. And so, he's Comcat, communication officer. So anyway, so we're talking to him, and there's a little speaker, and there's a little microphone, or you can hold the handset, push a button, so you can be the only guy talking. And I'm not that guy in control. There's this one guy who's more, he's probably a scientist on this project. The rest of us are guys like me. We are what are known as bench technicians. We have our skill sets. So anyway, so we're all on the same page. He talks on the phone a little bit, and then we hear a little bit on the speaker, and then we're on the countdown, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, he hits the button, and these doors on the top of the trailer spring open. We don't see what's in there, but we see them spring open. And a purple beam about the color of this shoots out the top, and it goes all the way to space. You can see it going all the way to space. As far as your eyes can, you can see it going, right? And it goes way up there, and all of a sudden, way up there, you see it. It's probably the troposphere, and it looks like little diamonds. It's reflecting the sunlight in a very strange way. And then all of a sudden, I hear guys throwing up, and I mean really throwing up, like projectile vomiting. And I hadn't really eaten anything. I'd just been drinking water for the last 2 days. I didn't feel like eating, but these guys had ate. There was food, they ate. And those guys who ate were, like I said, projectile vomiting. And I looked over at them, and all of them who had long hair, their hair was standing straight up and waving in the sky. And their skin was, this really green, palo. And I look at my hand, and my skin looks like theirs. And I put my hand up here, and my hair is standing straight up, moving into my hand. And then I fall to my knees, and I want to throw up, but I can't. And I hear on the little speaker, turn it off, turn it off. And the guy who's in charge, he like hits the turn off button, but it doesn't turn off. He walks over to one of the poles that has a knife switch. It's, you know, down at the bottom of the pole, there is this thing, this lever that you pull. It's hooked mechanically by a fiberglass rod up to where the knife switch is, and they are spring loaded. So you go like this, it hits this thing, and bing, they disconnect. Well, that should have shut it off. It didn't. Now, everybody else is like rolling around on the floor, screaming and yelling, and I'm not. You know, I'm like, ugh. And the Mexican guy, he's, you know, looks at me and he goes, "How you feel?" I said, "I don't feel good." He goes, "You don't look as bad as those guys." So the guy in charge comes over, "You too. How you feeling?" And we say, "Not the best." And then he looks at us and he goes, "Well, you don't look as bad as those guys." So he goes, "Come with me." So we go with him. We get into one of the trucks. Doesn't even click. You know, you got to keep click. Doesn't even click. So in the protocol, it said, you know, back 3 miles, it said to leave a vehicle there. And then it said to leave another vehicle, these little pickup trucks, every half a mile. So we went as fast as we could to the next truck about a half a mile away. Didn't even click. And there was a disconnect there. The purple pencil stream of energy was still in the sky. It was diamonding even more and pulsing. And so we walked as fast as we could to the next truck and pulled that disconnect, and nothing stopped. And then we got in the truck and it started. And we drove all the way to the last section of where they had what is, when I say knife switch, it means it disconnects physically, but there was a place where it had a device that cut the cable, right? So we, you know, hit the knife switch. Purple thing is still going. We hit this device. It cut the cable. Those 3-4 wires fell off the insulators down, and there was this kind of thing going between the ends of those wires and this, and we drove our truck to the last spot where we could, the next pole down, there was a knife switch, so there was no current going there, and we had this tool that was made out of fiberglass where you could grab a wire and pull it. And now these things weren't tied, so we pulled it down and we tied that fiberglass rod to the pickup truck and drove it until we pulled that wire all the way out. And we did it with all the other wires. And as soon as we did that and had a space of about a quarter mile between the end of the wire and these wires, the purple light got dimmer, the sky, you know, stopped being diamondy, you know, and the machine went and stopped. Got in the truck, we drove back to see how the other guys were, and they were like covered in their own vomit and shit, and they were not feeling that good, and they couldn't get up, and they could barely talk, so the head guy gave us all water and a couple of pills that he had in his own little briefcasey box. And we were sitting there, and those who smoked, and I was just sitting there trying to get into state. Couldn't. And other shamanic tools I had didn't work. And then all of a sudden, I heard, you know, the sound of helicopter blades. And those make a big noise far away. And it was a Chinook, a big helicopter. And it kind of flew over us and then around us a couple, you know, like, you know, kept an eye on us. And then all of a sudden, 2 small, quick helicopters that we used to call bumblebees showed up. And guys in suits popped out and came over and, like, had instruments like, you know, seeing how we were, and then vehicles showed up and other guys in suits came out and were like looking at us, and the guys who were really, really not doing very well, they put in the Chinook, and it was a semi-medical outfitted vehicle, and they put them in that and took them away. And then another helicopter, a Huey, came, and we got in that. And they flew us back to Area 51, actually, because that's like really where they have the landing, where they have the Groom Lake. Anyway, so they put us in a building that kind of looked like, your average, something between a grammar school auditorium and a hospital. And we all had beds, and the guys who were really sick weren't there when we got there, and they, took our clothes off. They gave us kind of, I guess they were kind of like scrubs, and but the tops you could take off very easily from the back, and so it was like scrub pants and a hospital gown, I guess. And so they had very nice beds, and they had TV and a couch or two and some nice chairs and some magazines, and we couldn't leave, and they kept, taking our blood and taking us away and some x-raying and, being examined. Then after about the next day, the other guys showed up, and they were much better than they were when we last saw them, but they weren't as, our skin was back to regular color. We didn't feel really that screwed up. But my ability to go into state still wasn't there. So about 5 days go by, and we're all in pretty good shape, and we're all eating pretty good, and their food is really good, and pretty much you can get whatever you want, within fish, chicken, or steak, vegetables. And we then one day we wake up, and the head guy who's a doctor said, "Okay, you guys are all good. You ready to go?" And we go, "Yeah, we're ready to get out of here." And he goes, "Well, because you did such a great job, we're going to reward you. We're taking you to Las Vegas, and you're going to spend a whole week there. And we're going to give you a lot of money, and we're going to give you tickets to go see Joey Heatherton, and whatever you want to do, you can do. Nice, you're going to get a suite rather than a room, and blah 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 blah." Oh, that's okay. So we're each given a plastic bag that has a polyester suit in it. And each of these suits are a different color: pink, yellow, green, blue, orange, some bright, some, business. Anyway, but they're all the same, pants, jacket, vest, nice shirt, tie, right? So they roll in a manicurist, barber, and we get our hair cut short. And they say, "We're going to cut you. Yeah, most half of you guys got long hair, but it'll grow back. We need this to test the hair. And, you're not getting out of here unless you let us shave and, cut your hair and trim your nails. And you'll like it. This girl is very good at giving manicures and pedicures. Pedicures, yeah, they're going to do your feet too. Anyway, so they do that, and we get dressed in these polyester suits, and each one has our name on it. The bag does, and everything fits just right. Look, we look actually pretty good. And I'm wearing a kind of, Kelly green suit. I mean, it's a little weird for me, but I look in the mirror, I look pretty good. So we all walk out. We get into a van. They drive us out to the tarmac, and we get on like a 737, I think. It wasn't like a Learjet. It was a regular commercially jet, and I think it was a jet that flew from Las Vegas to Groom every day, but we were the only guys on it. So as we got on, we were given an envelope with our name on it, right? And in the envelope was a invoice to go to X, Y, or Z hotel, and another envelope with $2,500 cash in it, and another envelope with all these tickets, like see Joey Heatherton, a whole bunch of different shows to go see, and then there was another ticket with about $5,000 worth of chips that you can go into X, Y, or the name of the gambling casino, and they would give you X amount of chips, and you could play them on the slots or the games or whatever you wanted. So, and it had also another envelope with, go eat at Zippy's, lobster dinner restaurant, or go eat all the buffets you want at this casino. So we'd have a week of hedonism beyond belief. The American dream, dressed in our nice polyester leisure suits and wearing floor shine shoes. Anyway, so we leave Groom and we land in whatchamacallit, and we're talking to each other. I mean, we're not best of friends. The only guy I know is the Mexican guy, who I know relatively fairly well, and so we're all looking, and none of us are going to go to the same hotel. None of us have tickets to go to the same place. We all have $2,500 cash, and we're all going, well, okay. So obviously, when we get to Las Vegas, we're all going to go different directions. So we get off the plane, and we're walking off, and the Mexican guy goes, hey, are you in any rush? I go, no. He goes, let's go get a drink. So we get a drink, and we're sitting in the restaurant, and we're talking, and he goes, what do you think of what happened? Because we weren't really allowed to talk to each other when we were at Groom. And I said, well, I don't know. That was pretty weird. He goes, weird? You got to be kidding. That's weird. And he goes, how do you feel? I said, well, I feel pretty good. I mean, there's certain things like, that's a little strange. And I told him that I meditated and all that kind of stuff. And he goes, I know. He goes, I pray. I said, well, prayer is just like meditation. It's just, more cultural. And anyway, so we're talking, and he goes, I'm actually scared. I go, what do you mean scared? And I said, I think they're going to kill us. I said, really? I said, they could have killed us at Groom. They could have killed us in that airplane. They could have killed us a lot of places. Why? And he goes, I don't know. I just don't feel right about this. And I'm not going to, I've already checked, and there's a flight to Mexico City. I'm just going to go over to that store over there and buy myself regular clothes and go to Mexico City and see my brother. And he goes, don't tell me where you're going to go, but I would suggest you do something similar. And I go, well, and I'm thinking to myself, I've been wanting to go back to New York. It's been almost 3 years. And so I decide right then and there, I had this other plan of like, I'm going to stay in Mexico. I'm going to be a master electrician. I'm going to start my own business. I have all of these connects, big money. Dr. Romero's here. Grandfather David's here. I have all these friends within the indigenous community. I have all these artist friends. This ain't a bad life, and I got lots of money in the bank. And by this time, I had a checking. I moved my money to a checking account, and I actually had something similar to a debit card. They called it a credit card, but I didn't want to. I said, can't I just use the same card? And it's, yeah, we'll run it like a credit card, and we'll just constantly pay the bill. That's fine, not a problem. So anyway, I decided that that I also had checks that when I get back to New York, I was going to go someplace else, open up a checking account, and put the money into that, and then just go and get it once in a while. So anyway, and I made up my mind like that because something he said just made me go, yeah, okay. And that's because I always let my gut tell me what to do. Meaning I had this whole other life all planned, and I decided, I'm going back to New York. So he goes, why don't you just stay in the restaurant for, I don't know, 10 minutes until you see me heading to the other end of the concourse, and then you can't see him anymore, and I can't see you. Then you can do whatever you're going to do. And I said, okay, good idea. Because the other guys had already left, taking taxis, going wherever they're going. And I got up, and I had already kind of, I had my teeth. No, I didn't. But I had a T-shirt that they gave me. And so I went into the men's room at the bar, and I took off my polyester jacket and my polyester tie and my polyester vest and my polyester shirt, and I had a cotton T-shirt underneath. And so I just kept the pants on and my floor shine shoes and my T-shirt. And I walked out of that men's room, right? With my envelope, pulled it up, stuck in my back pocket. And I had taken all that, other stuff, I took the money in the envelope and kept it in my pocket. And I walked out, and I went down, and I had seen a shop, and I went in there, and I bought myself a Western shirt, Western jeans, and Western cowboy boots, and a cowboy hat. And I went into the try-on room with my polyester pants and floor shine shoes and my T-shirt, and I changed my clothes, and I had gotten some makeup, like tanning stuff, meaning it like knocked your skin browner. And so I went in there, I changed the clothes, and I put the tanning stuff on my face and on my arms, and I looked about 5 levels darker. I could almost pass for Hispanic. I made myself that dark. And I came out of the dressing room, and I said, okay. And I had all of the, tickets of the clothes in my hand. I said, here, I'm wearing these clothes. I'll buy them now. So he rang it up. I paid him in cash. I walked over to the thing and looked at where the next airplane to New York City was and saw what airlines it was. Went over and bought a ticket for, I said, when's, this flight is leaving when? Oh, in about half an hour. I said, you got a seat for me? Oh, yes, sir. We got a seat for you. Bought the seat with cash, got on the plane, landed in New York. And that's the end of this story that took 2 hours and 54 minutes and 35 seconds. And I'm going to sign off at 54 seconds. And so that should be amusing. I hope, well, let's see. Maybe I'll take just a minute or two to see what you guys had to say. Art Bell was murdered. Why? Well, you find out. All I can say is that Art Bell was one of an original. I met him a number of times when he came to New York and went to, back in the day when I was doing conferences. And he was a special person. I think that's why they whacked him. He was a special person. And the other thing, he had access to a lot of information. And I think he was of a certain age, and he had been harassed a lot. And I think he was going to say things that he was told not to say, and he was going to come out with it. I mean, they took him off the air. They took him off the satellite. They took him, they shut him down every which way they could. But because he was Art Bell, he still had access. He still had the ham radio. So I think he was going to spill the beans. But I don't understand why they did it, because they're going to spill the beans anyway. As Stephen Greer always says, disclosure's coming tomorrow. No. But they're going to do a red flag that will be an element of disclosure. So, it won't be the full story. And, the guys who run the Khazarin mob, part of the thing is they're scared that they're going to be blamed, or they're going to have to go to some kind of jury trial or any of the above. I don't think so. And in reality, guys, we have to forgive them. We have to do what Mandela did. When he became president of South Africa, there could have been blood in the street, but he didn't let that happen. So we have to transverse this little seesaw of the moment. And, the other thing, art was, a lot of people say to me, boy, Al, you're an acquired taste, right? Well, this is true because, I kind of say it like I say it. But I am empathetic to try to appreciate everyone's point of view. Now, Art Bell had that in him, but not in spades, meaning he had an ego that was pretty strong. But it was okay because he was a sweet, nice, really smart guy who really had seen a lot of things and was able to put a lot of the dots together. And he did it in a way that was, like me, tells the story really truthfully, where, George Norrie is such a sycophant. Oh, he just I don't listen to the show anymore, I listen to all the people who are on that show who are interesting on their podcasts. Why do I need to listen to? Because George knows zip. He asks the most stupid questions. When people say something, he will bring something up so people will think he knows what he's talking about, but he's just showing what a moron he is. And so I have to feel sorry for George Norrie. But that's why he was put there, because he's just a moron sock puppet. Whereas Art Bell was truly an original. And I have a sense that over all the years and all the interviews and all the things that he did, that he kind of pushed certain people the wrong way. And for vendetta reasons or ego reasons or whatever reasons, they took him out, But I really have no idea other than that. Let's see, what else do you guys have to say? Corey Good, so he's all about, the space fleet, and he's a time traveler, and he's all that. He may be all that. Al Bielek was all of that. And, when people heard him talk, they said, what kind of moron is this guy? But, in reality, he knew things that he could only know if he was there, because I knew things only because I was there. So he, I could connect him and Duncan and Duncan and, Preston Nichols, those three guys. I feel, they had gone through hell and back. And anyone who's that gone through it, well, they're like kind of talking. Where Corey Good, I don't know whether he's just an MK Ultra guy who is telling the story that his handlers wanting him to tell. He wants to do this stupid thing where he's going to trademark a secret space fleet, or a lot of the nomenclature of the disclosure movement. And he's very, Stephen Greer. I know Steve. I lived in Asheville for almost 10 years when he was a emergency room doctor, and then he kind of got into his whole shtick. And there weren't many of us who had any kind of experience. Well, there were a few people there. There was, what was George? There was a guy who was, he had a, he had been part of the Rad Lab. He knew all of my mentors. He knew George Christie. He knew Kluber, what's his name? Can't believe he was my mentor. Speech at the UN, a lot of people came to me and say, okay, you're young, you're smart, you've got this intuition, you had a lot more experience for your age than most people do. So hey, you're my new student. You're worth me spending my last moments with. So that wasn't Greer. Greer wanted people to idolize him. He's doing this for people to think he's great or something. And that's part of that thing. You should never be the hero to be the hero. You should never get involved or try to be the hero to something or someone unless you can do good, unless you can really step up and make it a better situation. Now, Greer is pretty good at connecting the dots and getting people together, and his little podcast is pretty interesting. He gets interesting people, but he does it in this way that puts a skank on it, a stink on it, or that actually makes it easier to debunk what he's saying and makes it harder for that information to really come out. And Corey Good is same as that, and that's the best as I can do. Yeah, yikes is right. You're going to be, what, stove up? Don't know what that means. Eat some raw veggies. Well, I try to every day. And drink my own urine. That's always good, too. What adventures, buddy? I just gave you a ton of adventures there. I was in bliss. Yep. Anybody else here? No? That was the end of the show. Okay, 3 hours, 3 minutes, and 43 seconds. I love you guys. Talk to you tomorrow.